All right, looks like we should be live now. Welcome, people of the future, because it's not anybody listening to it just yet, because I haven't put the link anywhere. But this is the show and tell stream where we find links to show and then tell people about them. So I'm here with Glebs and Prince of Queens. You guys want to say hi?
Hello.
Prince, you can hear me, right? Prince, if you're talking, I can't hear you right now. I know we had. I think your stuff's working. Well, we'll figure that out as we go. But the point of this stream, this is a very special, highly anticipated stream because there's a friend in our circles named Black Knight Fool, and you're probably aware of this, but he basically thinks that lesbians are controlling everything. Um, and it's actually kind of comical to the point where like a lot of people are like, oh my god, just stop complaining about lesbians. But I think maybe he's onto something, and I think that any question is worth asking, and I think we're gonna get to the bottom of it. We're gonna try to do our most vigorous defense of the lesbian question. To what degree are lesbians pulling all the strings, and what can we really say about them generally? So that I guess that's the lesbian question is are they controlling the world through feminism? A lot of people they think it's the Jews or they think it's the Freemasons or they think it's the Jesuits, but no, I think maybe all along it was the lesbians.
No, this
That's
reminds
where
me
we're
of.
going.
I mean, this whole thing, about controlling the world. I don't know for what reason exactly, but this reminded me of a video made by some fundamental Christian, and a while back. I don't remember who made it, but it was unintentionally hilarious. It was about how evil those homo gays are, and they are bad because the video consisted like one third of the video was just him saying anal penetration. It was like, oh, those gays, they are bad because they have anal penetration. Those lesbians, they're also bad because they have anal penetration.
Yeah, well, hey, that's been a hot topic recently because of the whole Groiper War thing, right? People say it's all about that. Although
Oh
I
yeah,
suppose this
how
kind
does
of
how does anal fit into the conservative mindset or something? That part.
yeah, which it's not a bad question in that context because this sort of grifter right totally is making it about that, so they kind of do have to answer for that. Um,
Well, if they ask how does it fit, well, the answer is use more lube.
yeah, I guess with enough lube and determination, it can fit into any agenda because every gender has one. But yeah, so with the I wasn't exactly sure how to approach this topic because there's kind of a lot to it actually. It's very interesting. Now I get that obviously hashtag not all. Anytime we're talking generalities, it's never absolutely everybody a part of that group. So we'll just get that out there right at the beginning. But we have a few different themes. One theme is, of course, we have the trans exclusive radical feminists. These seem to mostly be lesbians, not exclusively, but there's definitely like a very strong lesbian contingent there. But then there's also political lesbianism, right? Which actually includes a lot of women who maybe aren't really lesbians, right? They're just kind of like being lesbian because they're convinced that all heterosexual sex is rape. And part of this lesbian kind of conspiratorial angle is that these very, very masculine women are trying to basically trick straight women into being gay. And political lesbianism is a great way to do that, right? Because you kind of make it this larger political narrative. See, I wonder why I still can't hear Prince.
I can't hear Prince either, so
Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is. I was talking to him before we started the stream, and I heard some clicking earlier. I thought that was him typing. Prince, you might need to hop in and out. If you can hear me, maybe hop in and out and see if that fixes it. It might just be Hangouts being dumb.
maybe better to DM him or something, because if we can't hear him, then chances are he might not hear us.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll message him real quick here. And you know what? I think it was after you came in, and I think that happens sometimes where, like, if a person enters, it'll, like, mess up someone else's audio. I think that's a
So
thing
it's
I've
like
seen with Hangouts. Not to blame you, obviously, but...
Yeah. It's like the jinxed trait in older Fallout games where there was some sound.
That's weird.
Oh, hey, I think you're back now.
Yeah, now I can hear you, but before that we couldn't hear anything from you since I joined.
Oh, maybe it automatically mutes people or something? I don't know.
I don't
Some
think so.
stupid thing.
Also, Prince just disappeared.
Oh, no, did he? Okay, well, now you just
Oh,
came back.
no, but the funny thing was that like you both disappeared from the character roster, but you were still in the call. So I don't know what's up with that. I guess it's Hangouts being Hangouts. Oh, you both disappeared as well, but obviously at least you are still here. I don't know what's going on. It's like this, the list of participants in the chat, it shows only me for some reason, even though obviously I'm not the only one. This is weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I still haven't figured out if my Discord chat is working. But we do have a couple of viewers now. Macho Gomez hopped in the chat, said happy to be your only viewer. And we're happy to have you. Happy to have you. So on this topic of lesbians, so there's the TERFs, there's the political lesbianism, and then also, like, lesbian witches are kind of a thing, and that really ties into kind of the divine feminine and all of that, which is, I guess, a recurring theme, a theme that I often talk about on my channel because it's very funny. So yeah, I'm not really sure exactly which way to go. So Black Knight Fool, like, if you're in my Discord, in the cellar, it's basically just full of, like, anecdotal things of, like, here's a lesbian doing something shisty, right? And I guess the question is, like, is there a larger agenda to it? And I keep reaching out to Black Knight Fool. He was supposed to... I wanted him to be on the stream, but every time I try to organize with him, he can never pick a time. He can never pick a time to actually be on, even though months ago he said he was interested in being on. So I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to pick a time and do it, and we'll do our best without you. And maybe he'll watch this later and then he'll be outraged because we're not going to do a good job at really explicating this lesbian conspiracy. And then he'll tell us exactly, like, where we went wrong. But I guess one thing that I think is kind of a useful backdrop to this is lesbians are rare. Like, not a lot of people know this, but like with gay people, it's not exactly 50-50 that it's male-female. There's a lot more men than women when it comes to, especially when it comes to quote-unquote, like, gold star, right? Like, women who are exclusively only interested in women. It's pretty rare. It's a lot more common for women to be kind of more bisexual. And I think this, of course, upsets a lot of people who are on the more extreme end of lesbians, right? It's kind of a lonely world because you have all these women who, maybe will just show up to be lesbian for a little bit and then will kind of leave later. So there's actually a little bit of a tension between, like, bisexual women and between lesbians. And that's something that I think most lesbians are obviously aware of, but outside of that, I think not a lot of people realize that that's a thing.
Well, but this. I'm sorry, but this shows how this old trope that women are irrational. But think about this: is if they have a very limited dating pool, they shouldn't alienate the largest part of their dating pool by saying, "Oh, you're not committed to this orientation fully, so fuck you." Beggars cannot be choosers. I'm sorry, but that's true.
Well,
So,
I think I think that the issue is that most of the bisexual women are actually mainly just experimenting, and they are ultimately going to end up in monogamous relationships with men. And the reason that, and this is something I'm not just saying that, and I've experienced, like, I've known women who were like this, like, who thought maybe they were a lesbian when they were a teenager, something like that, and then just turn around and we're always dating men, and maybe they're still bisexual and they'll have sex with a woman in between guys occasionally, sometimes. And so lesbians, like, you wouldn't want to get attached, and then that happens, and I think that happens over and over to lesbians, and I think that's the reason why. I really think so. And I've heard this from women. This is that lesbian sex isn't really that fulfilling in a lot of ways. Like, you can only do so much with oral, and lesbians use strap-ons, but it's not, a real dick. It's not like warm and real and and so that's a problem. And there's a thing called lesbian bed death, and this is like a real thing, which is that supposedly after about within 7 years, lesbians just sort of stop having sex with each other, and they instead maybe kind of just cuddle. And that's just a well-known phenomenon. But they also tend to be very possessive and jealous if they ever cheat, and so it's like this weird thing. So those are the tales that I've heard, and I've heard them from like there was an author in the 90s who was a lesbian. Her name was Misbehavior, and she talked about like lesbian bed death, and she was like, this is something I do not like to believe is true. However, if you are a lesbian who's been in a relationship for 7 years or longer and you still do have sex with your partner, please do contact me and dispel this, because I really don't want to believe it's true. So
I actually
7 years.
That's kind of funny, because everything you said about lesbian bed death, that's obviously something that's pretty well documented. It's not controversial, but I've heard a lot of women like there's a lot of variance, right, in like what works for them, and for a lot of women, like the full on penetrative stuff, it actually isn't very good, and for them it's mostly kind of that like less severe kind of thing. Or I guess shallower sort of play that works better for them. But like everyone's totally different, and I could see how, like for lesbians, it's kind of an advantage in a way. But it's also like anything you could do with a lesbian, you could kind of just do with a man anyway. Like the limiting factor really in all sexual pleasure is like your own physical body and your own actual apparatus, like regardless of who your partner is, you can kind of figure out, with or without toys as necessary, kind of how to make it work. But I think that mostly like we're hardwired to like and to seek and to value orgasms more than they're actually worth. Which might be a hot take, I don't know, but
Oh, makes sense.
yeah,
But,
right. Because it's like we're kind of evolutionarily or biologically hardwired to really really value this orgasm, and like if you think about it, like if it really lived up to all of the hype and like was this crazy awesome thing to the degree that like our systems are made to value it, I just feel like there's no way society would work. Like everything would just collapse.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Hi.
hey, you're here too
Hello.
now.
Yeah.
So, I actually did put the Hangouts link in the description this time. So I'm sloppier than usual in that like this this stream is like anyone can really hop on. So hey, Black Knight Fool, you can find this Hangouts link and you'll complete this stream. But anybody who hops on, you can just go ahead and introduce yourself. Give us your pronouns. Tell us how you'd prefer to be referred to. And you can shill something too. I don't think anyone minds if it's a quick little shill, just if you want to say who you are or whatever. That was for you, Toto.
Well,
You say, "Hi, I'm Toto. I'm an autistic, like trap twink thing," and
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, I want to go first. I'm Prince of Queens, and my pronouns are you. And so if you are referring to me, and let's say you want to say that I'm an asshole, you say you is an asshole.
Yeah, say you is too. You is. Otherwise, you're racist.
Or you say you's an asshole.
Yeah, that's right. My pronouns are just the N word. But for this stream, my pronoun is the L
isn't
word.
it thou? Yeah. The singular
My
form of you. It's thou.
Well, my pronouns are the F word. I'm an autistic trap twink thing, like Spacepan said. I'm also a giant fucking weeb. And yeah.
Yeah, I realize this is actually a little bit of an awkward stream because it's gonna be, well, besides Glebs, there's like a bunch of gay dudes kind of speculating on the secret motives of lesbians.
Right.
Damn it, I should have found a lesbian. Why couldn't I drag one lesbian in here and make them admit to what's really going on here?
You can pretend to be a lesbian. How about that?
This was funny though. In preparation for this stream, I was kind of like going through different videos or whatever, and I found a video from this lesbian who I guess was more on the radical side. She wasn't a TERF, like but she was a little bit she kind of pushed back on a little bit of the trans narrative. But I actually found her video to be very reasonable. And I left her a comment. I was like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm anti-feminist and I'm like the prom queen of the alt-right, but I agree with most of what you said. And I don't know if she's I don't know what she'll make of that. I don't know how she'll feel about that. But like she made a lot of great points about the grievances of the lesbian community and how they don't really have like a community anymore. There was like this massive generational shift from the 80s going into the present where like the current lesbians basically don't have anyone. And there's an echo now. Somebody opened the stream, make sure you mute it.
Well, there aren't really that many current lesbians left. Oh, I'm hearing an echo somehow.
That's because Mussolini joined and he is getting echoes into the stream.
Really?
Hi there, Marco.
Yeah, if anybody
there.
hops in, make
Okay,
sure you just mute the stream.
I'm getting oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Hi,
I don't think
I love
have
your
you been on here before. I think you're a new friend. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I usually go by Macho Gomez. By my profile picture, my pronouns are il and duce in that precise order.
Nice.
And yeah, I'm just some weeb and friend of Glebs.
All right, good stuff. Well,
I
friends
would-
of Glebs are welcome for sure.
I was gonna say about new lesbians. Oh god, it's really distracting me that the echo.
It's a coincidence.
It isn't me because I'm muted when I not talking.
It's Mussolini.
So try to talk.
Okay, No, I don't. I
I think
kind
it's
of
better now.
Yeah, it's mostly better. Okay, so yeah, the thing about new lesbians is that they largely don't exist, and they don't exist because they all become trans apparently, and I think I'm not sure where I was listening to this. It might have just been like a Tim Pool video, but there was like some recent study done, and it found that young females are more likely to become trans than males, for obvious reasons. Like nobody cares what women do, you know what I mean, like in terms of getting mad and being offended. Like nobody really gives a crap. And but more alarming to me is that if someone is a lesbian, that's just like whatever. But if they go trans, then they get more popular at school and people like want to be friends with them and they think it's cool and everything. So people are putting chemicals in their body because it's trendy.
Well, and that was
I
the
don't
topic. I want to find this video actually because you guys might find it interesting. It was funny because when I was watching it, I was like, this almost sounds like a mirror to a lot of what Prince talks about with the way the gay community has become. Like, but it was like the lesbian remix, and I found it like really kind of fascinating. And she had pointed out a lot of like, there's a lot of pressure put on lesbians to accept like trans women, right? And this is a theme that we've seen. It's a lot of these kind of male feminist allies who are transitioning to female, and then what they're doing is they are kind of pressuring lesbians into having sex with them, right? And it's like
Yaniv.
yeah,
Right,
right,
but the
exactly,
problem,
like Yaniv, and it's sort of like this like ultimate super beta mating strategy of like the least desirable, most toxic men in all of society to just be like, you know what, I'm gonna game the system and just be a woman this way. And then it's sort of like when you have more kind of gay males that are interested in becoming women, you have kind of like well-adjusted traps that are beautiful.
uh,
And then on the inverse side, you have these just like kind of freak show trannies that are just like preying on lesbians, I guess. And it's the clown world meme really hits the nail on the head. But I
I
found
think
the
that
video, by the way. Her channel's called the Homoarchy. Her channel's kind of defunct, but she actually was really reasonable. I really enjoyed her video. But that's funny too. She calls it the Homoarchy, and we call our podcast the Gay Freearchy, right? So it's like literally like a B version mirror for lesbians of everything that we do.
The B version of what we do, of what you do. Oof.
Yeah, I know, right? And because what we do already is pretty, kind of niche and small. So it's like.
Wait, is it B rated or
shit.
bitch rated?
well, I think the only hypocrisy that I would point out usually is that I would feel more bad for them if they didn't like, or if they actually cared about like the male spaces being taken over, which was probably the first gay spaces to go, which were the gay male spaces.
It's just
From
that
what
now I don't want to be the Canadian Freud, but could it be just some sort of attention envy?
Well, that's actually a really good point. A lot of lesbians are very upset, I think, that there wasn't very much attention paid to lesbians throughout all of human history, and it's a very typical feminist pattern. And the reason that you don't see much mention of lesbians throughout all of history is because nobody cared. Like, if two chicks do whatever, like, really, honestly, no one cared. People were concerned with male homosexuality, and there's more prevalence of it too. And as a result, there was more relevance, right? It was both like more prevalent, but also something that people actually socially pushed back on more. So what lesbians do is they actually appropriate a lot of gay male suffering. And then on top of it, they try to say that they've been like erased somehow, when in reality, it's just that like they literally didn't exist. but they claim that it's a historical conspiracy. And, you know, maybe that's the real lesbian conspiracy, is this kind of rewriting of history to say that somehow, you know, they actually existed in a way that they really didn't. But I guess if I'm wrong, then I'm just perpetuating that. So, you know, I'd be happy to be corrected, but I'm pretty confident that I'm right.
Hello? Can you?
Yeah, now we can hear
Yeah,
you.
we can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, my. So wait, I'm really curious. Who are you talking about? That did they have like a homoarchy?
Yeah, so her
what?
channel's called the Homoarchy.
Who is this?
I don't know who she is besides the channel name The Homoarchy. I was looking for videos on political lesbianism and it came up, and she made a video called The Collapse of the Lesbian Community and Why You Should Resist It, which she uploaded in 2016, so it's a very old video. I don't think she's made videos in a couple of years. And she only has like 250 subscribers, so she's like a baby channel like mine. But I watched the video and I was totally on board. I was like, yeah, I don't need the collapse of the lesbian community. I will help resist it. As an anti-feminist and as the prom queen of the alt-right, I will help you resist the collapse of the lesbian community.
Oh, that's weird. We kind of started our channels like right at the same time.
Yeah, I guess hers didn't catch on.
Yeah,
But
well.
I thought she was pretty reasonable because she pointed out, for example, among transsexuals, of course, we have this massive disparity, and this disparity, curiously, mirrors the gay disparity, right? The gay disparity is it's mostly men that are gay, like gay women aren't as much of a thing, and then among transsexuals, it's mostly male to female, right?
No, it's not.
Isn't it? Oh,
No,
that's
no,
okay. There's
people,
the reason
no,
you have
people,
to take
no,
out
people,
the 15-year-old girls and the Billie Eilish fans.
no, people say that, but it's not true. It's
What?
just not true.
Okay, how is it not true?
I don't know where they even got that from. They just kind of say it.
I mean, maybe it's
Well, it
a
makes
misconception
sense.
because we
Like, have
pay
you
more
ever
attention to the male to
actually?
females, but
Yeah, have you ever actually like seen the data number from that, or is it just something that sometimes you hear people mention on streams and crap? Because I have never seen that data, and it does not match my experience. And you all know that I have been around in the places that these people are.
yeah, you've been places that racial slurs won't go.
Oh, not at all. Oh my god. You would
But
be an absolute pariah.
I'm trying to think. Well, the problem though is that like transsexual statistics are really really unreliable because like people can transition, they can detransition, they can be trenders, right? So you have to parse out like literally all of that, and there's not really any good way to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, right? You just got a pile of damaged homos, and there's just like no way to really divide it out.
What I would say though is that what is definitely true is that the amount of I mean, and either transgenders or actual maybe trans whatever male to female have gone up over the last 5 years dramatically. Like it's been like a night and day. I think that is very clearly having to do with fourth wave feminism. Like I think it's just like everybody who's slightly what's the word I'm looking for, like influential, not influential, but like it that can be easily influenced. Everybody who can be easily influenced and who's male and who's like kind of insecure realized, oh my god, it would be so much better to be a woman. There's no reason to be a woman. Oh, I can be a woman? Okay, cool.
No, yeah, I think that happened. Yeah, that's what I think is in play, and I think that the counterbalance to it, this idea of all these girls transitioning into being boys, I think is just peer pressure, and it's just transgenderism. Like, that's my theory behind it, and I think they're inflating the numbers. I think if you look, like, if you were to really try to distill all of the transsexuals and find, like, the quote-unquote real ones, which I get is a contentious thing, because some people will argue that there are none. I'd argue that probably, some people experience a sort of dysphoria that maybe this is a path they want to take. But I'd argue that they're probably overwhelmingly male to female. But then I'd further argue that even these numbers are inflated by these kind of more like predatory males that are using it as kind of a last ditch effort to get at the female out of like desperation. So like on both ends of it, there's like a weird sort of dynamic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would say this real quick. I would guess that a lot of the female to male trans people. I mean, for one, I know for. I mean, I don't know this like in entire. I'm pretty sure I've known these people, but I can't actually think of one off the top of my head. But I believe that there are female to male trans-ish people who I think they'll say that they don't want the health risks associated from injecting testosterone. But ultimately, I also think it's largely just that they don't actually really want to look like a dude. They want to be recognizably female bodied, because why would you actually want to actually be a dude? Because it's not really that hard to pass if you take consistent amounts of testosterone. You will end up looking like a guy. It's a very powerful chemical, you know?
I will say, last week on the stream we had actually a female to male transgender hop on, and they had a lot of very interesting things to say and a lot of really good feedback. Or a lot of, and actually, and their voice actually was like spot on. We actually had no idea. At least I didn't. I don't think anyone did.
Oh yeah, I remember. I was there.
Yeah, were you there when they were there? Because I thought, yeah, that's right. Because you showed up in the chat later too. So
I was there. So
yeah, they'd actually make a pretty good gaytriarchy guest. I think they'd probably have a lot of interesting insight. I think it was Darcy, right? But. So yeah, I don't know, but you're right. I guess I don't really have the hard data, so I am just kind of speculating on that. But I do know we had those stories about like the schools, right, with the transgenderism, and that there was like this rate of like, it was like some ludicrous percentage of the students at this school were trans, and it turned out it was all of these girls who like all of their friends were doing it, so they were all doing it, you know.
Yeah, it's I don't know exactly when it was. Maybe the 90s, 80s, or maybe start beginning of the 2000s. Wasn't there like a big trend, like, oh, everybody's bisexual, or everybody is lesbian? I think I remember that. I'm not that old, but I think I remember something about this.
Oh yeah, and I think that's still a very common narrative, and
So
I think there's truth to it. If you're a girl, I think it's true.
So basically, it's just that the trend has changed. So I'm just wondering what is it gonna be next?
I guess after transsexual, where do you go from here? You know.
Armless sexual. I don't know. Cutting off my arms. I'm fucking armless. I don't know. Like, there's actually people like that who like fucking identify like as people who have amputations.
That reminds me. I was walking home today, and this couple had a little Hong Kong doggo, and it was a tripod, and it was waddling around, and it was so cute. It was so damn cute.
Yeah, because there is a difference between the people who identify as someone who has a handicap, and there is one, I forgot the name, there's an actual scientific name. It's the people who have some sort of a stranger arm or something, or limb. It's just
like a phantom limb.
If it's like you don't, it's a neurological disease, but you really can't do anything about it, and like the guy will untreated, they will probably try to chop his arm off. It's a real problem.
Yeah, because it's a part of the brain that is responsible for recognizing some object being a part of your body, and for some reason one of the limbs or maybe several are not recognized as part of you. So they would say something like, "Oh yeah, it's attached to my body, but it's not my arm." It's weird. It's hard to understand what it is. And on the other side, it's like sometimes usually it's something that experienced by people on drugs, where they feel that they are like part of the room, or the one with the furniture or something. It's weird. It's hard to explain, hard to understand, hard to imagine, but it's real.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, I am 1000% in favor of transhumanism. Like, I think the moment that humans affected their environment and the moment humans invented medicine, that sets the precedent. We can do whatever the hell we want. Now, of course, when you're dealing with kind of the
Yeah.
cutting edge of transhumanism, that's kind of there's a lot of horrors kind of involved with that. And I
Yeah,
think
there
we need to be
is
honest
sort
about
of
the risks.
there's sort of two paths of transhumanism that really depends on the person. There is the technological path, say, oh yeah, you just replace whatever whatever is starting to not function, or better your things with technology. And there's a genetic route where you just alter your genetics and the way your body works to get to go further. I'm more of the
Well, the
technological
genetic
part to replace whatever is not functioning anymore, but the genetic part, I don't know. I feel like we're sort of gonna lose what makes us human, at least slowly.
Well, with the genetic part, it's the problem is that like we have genetic therapy even now, but the problem is that it's something that you have to apply all the time, because new cells that are created will have the old normal genome that you had before the gene therapy, so you'll have to reapply it all the time for it to stay. The only way to make it permanent is to genetically engineer the next generation, so you won't be the one to get the benefits. And besides, well, when it comes to choosing genetic path or cyber augmentation, well, the latter is technically it's reversible, and you can upgrade your implants to something more advanced further down the line. But when it's when it comes to genes, it's kind of more permanent.
I mean,
it's
regardless, it's an
wonderful.
interesting distinction, right? With transhumanism, are we talking about replacing things through technology or talking about genetic modification? I guess maybe my perspective is very, very materialist. Like, I don't see any real distinction there besides the fact that, like, one's just kind of smaller than the other, right? So I feel like even if we have perfected genetic alteration, I think, yeah, that's just a new form of medicine. I don't really see any fundamental reason besides in its effects to make the distinction. I say, yeah, if you want to edit it and become your fucking World of Warcraft character IRL, like, I don't know, you do you. Fuck it.
Well, as a weeb, I think maybe Xi will know something about it. There is an anime manga that's about this. There's two. It's a spoiler, so I forgot the name, but it's just on Earth.
Wait. So you're gonna spoil an anime, but then we don't know what anime it is. So like, okay, everybody,
I forgot the name,
random
but
spoiler. It's mystery bag spoiler. We don't
something
know.
Gargantua, something Virtuous Planet. I think so.
I haven't heard of
Anyway,
it, but go ahead.
anyway, you have a dude that's in the army, in basically in a robot to fight some sort of eldritch horror in space, and then somehow he gets shot back to Earth through a portal, and he basically sees the same eldritch horrors in the ocean, and he basically discovers that there are humans that went through the genetic path and they became basically squids, and the space squids are the same as the Earth squids. It's
So
like,
it's like,
holy shit.
oh, is it like related to Splatoon? You are a kid, you're a squid.
No, they're permanently, if they're permanent squids, but the guy just discovers it because he went to a submerged research center, and it's like, holy shit, those squid fetuses looks a fuck ton like human fetuses. And then his robot crushes it automatically. It's like, oh fuck, you just scarred your pilot, robot.
I just want my artificial ass wounds, okay?
I love the fact that that's a step, right? That you have an artificial uteri, but like that's not good enough. No, I want to put it in the ass and fucking have my humpback little fetus and grow it there and have it out the ass.
Yes.
Otherwise, I won't feel like a mom. Like,
It's like I think that the wrong show is called Out of Degeneracy. This one should have the name.
yeah, I have my point of departure with the grifter conservatives, but also with the gripers, right? And I want to make a video about it because since I am the official leader of the alt right, because I did defeat Claire Caw fair and square, I feel like I should have weighed in by now. And honestly, this stream I feel like is gonna vindicate all of the ones who are just like, yeah, I can't trust the homos. So I'll put it on the record. I'm sympathetic to some degree. But so I wanted to get I wanted to throw out kind of the transsexual and transgender conversation, just as kind of a backdrop because we're talking about lesbians, right? And a huge part of it is this distinction, this like lesbians often in opposition, often as part of the trans exclusive radical feminists, right? So I'm trying to think, where do we even go from here? Like,
Well, what has been discussed already?
well, okay, so we discussed a little bit about like the prevalence of lesbians, some of the potential motivations for lesbians to promote things like political lesbianism. We talked a little bit about female to male versus male to female prevalence among transsexuals, differing lesbian attitudes about it. Then we got into transhumanism, which is always fun to talk about. But I guess
Right.
here's what I'm struggling with. The problem is like you can throw a million anecdotes about like here's a lesbian who's up to some shisty bullcrap, but like at what point does that amount to a conspiracy? We could argue that, for example, like lesbians are rare enough that if you have like enough of a cabal of lesbian just bullshittery, that then like it has to be statistically relevant, but I feel like that's kind of a stretch. And I really
Right.
wish we did have Black Knight Fool here because
No, it's
he'd
not
make
the lesbians that
case
killed
much
Jeffrey
better.
Epstein.
Well, I think like the Black Knight Fool would like go into like I think I remember him talking about how like lots of female or woman shelters are run by like supposedly lesbians and how they will gaslight their views of men to make them feminists or like political lesbians somehow.
Yeah, and again, we come back to this problem of even if we have specific examples, how do we know to what degree this really is defining the overall conversation, right? And I feel like that's just the perennial kind of issue with this sort of a discussion is that, people who are promoting the question, they can only build their case through specific examples, right? So it's another specific example after another, after another, after another. And then people who are skeptical are always going to be able to say, well, that's just one anecdote, right? So I'm not sure exactly how we break this stalemate in regard to the lesbian question. Because basically the whole history, for anybody who wasn't listening earlier, the whole history of this thing is that Black Knight Fool, he always ties things into lesbians, basically. He argues that, like, basically all of the radical feminists are lesbians, and that they're kind of, like, pulling the strings and really promoting this and really, really running the show. And it's just kind of become a joke in a lot of these circles that were just like, oh, here's Black Knight Fool complaining about the lesbians again. And I think he gets annoyed at people dismissing his concerns because I think they're legitimate concerns he has. And I told him, like, hey, like, I'd be happy to have a conversation kind of like giving a platform to this idea that maybe there is something to this. But, like, he can never show up anytime that I try to schedule it, so I decided to just kind of have it. So we've said his name at least 3 times, but he hasn't shown up, which makes me sad. I'm still hoping that happens.
Have you said it in front of the mirror?
Oh shit, that's the part I missed. Yeah. Terrence says, I'm pro-political lesbian separatism. They just need to do the separating part. I don't know if you meant that. That comes off a little bit more racy than I think.
Yeah, the thing with just political lesbianism, I just think it's like, God, it's just... What if it was you hated some other race so much, you would get lynched, like, literally.
It's a good point, actually. Well, I mean, unless it's a white race, then hating it's okay and trendy, because there are certain groups of people that you are allowed to openly hate and be applauded for it because it's progressive.
Yeah, it's like all those people saying, it's like, oh my god, men are the worst and everything. It's like, if you hate men so much, why the fuck are you dating one? Or how the fuck are you not lesbian? Just like, I was like, and then they say, not all men is bullshit. Well, what the fuck are you? It's just,
I guess we could talk about this idea that so this actually would transition into the idea of like feminist paganism and witchcraft and that sort of thing. Basically this idea that all heterosexual sex is rape. And I think that relates to feminist epistemology, which is that in most of our theories of Western knowledge, it's penetrative, right? You have nature, which is the darkness. This is a form of dualism, right? That which is man-made, that which is discovered, that which is civilized is part of the light, part of the good, part of the enlightened. And then nature is associated with the darkness, with the unknown, with the other. And in all of science, particularly the hard sciences, we see civilization phallocentrically penetrating nature to take her secrets. And we don't ask nature for consent, therefore science is rape, right? And this is the general overall pattern we see, right? Is that which is other is raped by civilization. Civilization is phallocentric, it is masculine. And if we, rather than doing this, if we embrace mysticism, if we embrace feminist epistemological ways of knowing, right, that are more based in valleys rather than sharp peaks, then we can tap into kind of this mystic realm and gain kind of supernatural knowledge. So I think this is kind of like the overall framework that leads to like all of these feminist witches, right? To this lesbian paganism, this lesbian witchcraft, this idea that there's kind of like an abominable nature to the masculine because it's essentially rape. Although they're anti-essentialist, right? So the fact that I've drawn that conclusion is just another example of phallocentric, toxic, masculine epistemology.
Well, speaking of those what they are called ecosexuals, when they penetrate nature, they literally penetrate nature.
Are they penetrating nature, or are they kind of enveloping nature? Right.
They do all sorts of weird stuff, and it's like.
Yeah, it's a fancy
no pun intended, by quite a few, people in academia. So that shows that if someone is a professor, doesn't mean that they have anything between their ears that is properly functioning. So, yeah, academia needs some deep cleaning, I think. There's so much degeneracy there.
Something I find to be quite sad is that when my mother mentioned to me, when she read my current university papers and questions, she basically said there was nothing like this about feminism and gender when I was studying. And that's kind of like explains that academia have become infested by these pointless things. Mm-hmm. And she basically said it was all pointless and stupid, which is kind of funny because she herself is technically a feminist. So Yeah, there's a lot of it actually.
Well, when would that have been? About like roughly how long ago?
She was studying when I was a kid, last decade, like between 2000 and 2009.
Wait, how
That was
young
what she
are
was
you?
studying.
That seems
I'm
crazy.
21 years old.
Okay. Yeah, because I was in university from 2008 to 2012. And by then, a lot of these feminist narratives, I think, had kind of, taken yeah, they were there. Like, it was definitely there. But I do think it changed. I think that especially with the more trans-centric agenda to the LGBTQ, I think that's a more recent development. And I think that's literally just because of gay marriage being legalized. Gay marriage got legalized. The progressives didn't have a gay issue anymore because of that. So then they tried to they went back to the drawing board and figured, okay, how can we mobilize the alphabet people? And they were like, well, we can do trans bathrooms and just like really capitalize on the T. And like miraculously, that was their best gambit. I mean, I guess it was either that or what they were going to, support all the maps, or like what else? Like there's like it's such a bizarre situation that we're in, you know. And I think they jumped the shark so much so that I think now people are questioning this entire idea of having this like coalition of all of the different sexual minorities, which is great because I've never ever identified with it. I've always thought it was a stupid idea.
Well, I can actually explain it quite easily. That's because the so-called LGBTQ community is, in all honestly, exclusively a political community. And if you are gay or if you're trans, you have actually nothing concrete in common. Just for being gay or trans, those things are not connected in the slightest. Okay, and the LGBT community are not welcoming to people who are homo or bisexual, or nor to people who are transgender, who have themselves different opinions to that. Like they do not. They do not. It doesn't matter if you're gay or trans. It's only matter if you have certain political ideas, because most of the LGBTQ whatever spaces or groups, they're basically usually cisgender heterosexual people who identify something weird because they have a leftist agenda about gender. That's basically 90% of it, more or less. And I think that's just how it's most like always been. And that historically speaking, the LGBT community, you basically just bullied people who are gay and transgender who didn't when we didn't have rights, in order to force associate with those people, even though we never truly wanted to. Because a lot of gay people, myself included, were usually in favor of left-wing political parties just because we didn't have rights, and the right-wing didn't want to give us those rights for whatever reasons. Don't care. It's in the past, and yeah, and that's just what the community have exploited, and now they don't care about us anymore. Because what people need to know about progressivism is not the same thing as what we call the social justice war. It's not the same thing as regressive. Like progressive, originally about societal progress, and how they do that is by improving your population. Like having open borders is not progressive. Eugenics is progressive. Like I don't agree with any of it, but it's good to keep them apart. And the most progressive things, like what progressive people have been saying, is that they have been argued that gay men should not be allowed to have biological children because they think it's exploitative, and because it's basically eugenics in that sense, because controlling who gets to breed and who doesn't get to breed.
I have heard some lesbians advocate for that. That they say for gay males to like have a surrogate woman to produce like an offspring for them. That it's like a form of exploitation, right? There's rich gay men who can just pay women to use their bodies as they please, right?
Isn't that what? Like,
right, but they're being
basically
compensated.
all work is about, though. Like every single time you are employed, you are basically saying, "I'm going to use my body to get money." Like that's all work. Period.
Yeah, well, because they're socialists.
all
They
play
think
with each
everything
other.
is slavery. You know, that's
Yeah, that's because they're communists.
well, and that's why I believe, like, if you're an employer, you should be allowed to just say, I'm not going to hire anybody who's leftist. They fundamentally
Exactly.
believe, as part of their ideology, that this relationship is exploitative. Like, why should I believe that they're going to be a good employee? Like, I think that's a
Yeah, exactly.
perfectly
Well-
logical, reasonable conclusion. If you're anywhere to the left
Well,
of
you
Ayn
could-
Rand,
you could
should not be
even-
employed.
You could even just justify it as being. I think those people will bring a toxic work environment, or just that they're generally unpleasant.
Some
So
of
it's
them
like,
will,
yeah, I'm
though.
not
If
gonna
they're
work with them.
ANCOM, they will. They'll engage in counter economics and they'll try to sabotage your business.
And this is exactly why the video Prince of Queens made about why doesn't intersectional feminists call themselves communism call themselves communists make perfect sense, because they sort of like are.
Yeah.
That's true. They are communists. Like they believe that working is slavery. It's just period.
Right, like I fucking hate like the fact that like in that relationship, like the woman's obviously being compensated for being a surrogate, and
Yeah.
they still think, oh, it's exploited. Like, no, she's consenting to it because she's gaining something from it.
Well, and also she has the choice, right? Because she has this uterus that she can use for this thing that just gives her an option. If she chooses not to do that, that just means she has the same options afforded to men.
Yeah,
right,
and even in
other one, it doesn't matter. Like,
And even in some countries, she still have like all the rights. She can still have an abortion if she likes to, but if she does it, she just have to repay she just have to refund the people who hired her in the first place.
Well,
So she
that's
doesn't. She still have
patriarchy.
rights.
That's if a woman wants to choose to be a surrogate and take the money but then abort the fetus, I think it's absolutely exploitative to make her pay the money back.
No, it's fair because she
Well,
got paid to do something
joking,
that she didn't do. Yeah, I know,
That's
but
like
I'm
communist
practicing.
logic, though, is like literally that.
pretty much, yeah.
But like I'm going to actually have a surrogate when I get a boyfriend and when I get married after college, which will be in about 5 years or so. I hope, if I get finished with college soon enough, and as long as I can pay for it and have a stable employment, of course. And when I was like in certain countries, when you go to Pride, they're basically speaking against it because they say that there are only white people doing it, and they believe that white people having their own children is a bad thing, which shouldn't be surprising to no one.
Really? That's
What?
so fucking stupid.
Yeah, because well, the other kid, why don't you adopt them? Oh, because they're not white enough. I was like, yeah. So what? You basically say all the country in the world is racist, and the people of color are oppressed by everybody, and they're always oppressed, always and forever. Then people say like, okay, then I'm gonna make sure my kids are as white as possible and never date someone who's dark. No, you can't do that. What? Do you want my kids to be oppressed? No. Then why shouldn't I only date white people?
That's actually the funniest eugenics argument I think I've ever heard.
It is. It's amazing. It's like they're tripping over themselves. It's the same thing when they say, when 4chan said it's okay to be white. They had no arguments for or against. They couldn't do anything about it. Don't you
Right,
remember
it's
that?
4D chats to reveal that they're actually fucking racist towards whites. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's just-
I love that.
Especially with trolls like that. It's just the only good response is to do nothing. If they said nothing, nobody would have heard of it.
But they can't.
But that means that would imply that they're
Right.
intelligent. They aren't
But they're
intelligent enough to actually not take the bait.
But they're also funny because didn't a politician in Australia even took it up to the Senate, and the left there took the bait, which was amazing. So
It's even like Trump. If they stopped for like 5 minutes to realize, like, maybe if we didn't talk about Trump 24/7, maybe his ratings wouldn't be that up.
true.
Maybe people wouldn't think we are just that we are how would you say in English, that you are just pouncing on everything that he ever says. There's like half his tweets are obviously bait.
Oh my
Yeah,
god,
but
it's
they
just like
always
a Joker
think
movie.
because they're like a fish. They always like think they're that dumb. But
Like
the best part,
piranhas.
is that- yeah, exactly. But it's that the fortune they even pull a even better prank. Do you remember what the other things they wrote and posted there was? You want to hear it?
Sorry, which one?
The second they said it's okay to be white, and then they said another thing. You want to know what that is?
Yeah. What?
Well,
They
Islam is
said-
right about women was, I think, the next
Yep.
closest
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
That one was my favorite.
Well, honestly, what
So
I
far-
really want to know is why are the Democrats trying so hard to impeach the most pro-Israel president ever? I think that's very anti-Semitic of them.
And they always have to call everybody Nazis. Okay, Trump. Okay, then I gotta
Well,
remove
the most
embassy.
pro-Israel president ever. That's actually one of my. That's one of the main problems I have with him, at least currently.
Oh yeah, no, I 1000% agree. It's like freaking stupid.
Yeah,
Well,
like
my problem is just Israel, at least the government. Let's not put all the citizens of Israel into it, but the Israeli government is just—it's a bunch of dicks, as much as Palestine.
And all the other governments in the whole planet. Shocking, I know.
Especially in that zone, it's more obvious.
I think the only
Yeah,
thing I
it's
like
like-
about Israel is they gave us Dana International, who is a treasure. But otherwise, I don't see the point.
they basically stole land from Muslims and then fucking wondered why Muslims fucking hate their guts now. I mean, they didn't like
but the
Jews
Muslims weren't
beforehand.
doing anything with it, so I kind of see both sides of that. I people talk about 2-state solutions or 1-state solution. I think it should be a 0-state solution.
Yeah, just like I don't. I guess it makes them
A
live.
zero-state solution. That's called a nuke.
Yeah, right. Well, honestly, that's
Yeah,
my
that's what I'm
solution to
talking about.
America too. It's just like, you know what? 50 states is 50 too many. Just
Oh, it's easy. It's like with North Korea. It's like you want to fix the problem, just it would take an afternoon. It would South Korea would be either an island. It would probably be either an island or North Korea would be a parking for tourists to South Korea.
Well, it wouldn't even matter if South Korea took back control of North Korea. The population is so small, and it's so barren country, North Korea, that's like they would basically just be swallowed in like a minute, and then South Korea could just be Korea run from South Korea again.
yeah. Yeah.
But like,
Oh,
So, like,
I wanted
go-
to bring it back to the LGBTQ spectrum because you had mentioned
Yeah.
like they trick a lot of gays into supporting like these leftist policies because they like kind of promise all these things. Like to me, it was never convincing because I looked at them like, well, what rights don't I have? And they're like, well, marriage, and I'm like, okay, but the government shouldn't be involved in marriage, which is an increasingly popular position. It's a position I've basically always had. It's a position that 100% of Christians, if they're like morally or ethically consistent, would have always taken, which tells you something about the overwhelming majority of Christians. Like, it's so obvious. I mentioned this before, but like I was arguing with Dean Esme, and I was like, why don't you guys just support the government not being involved in marriage at all? And he's like, we totally did. And I'm like, that's such bullshit. Like, nobody advocated for that position until after you couldn't have your cake and eat it too, right? But anyway, with the leftists, like, this idea that, like, government enshrined marriage, like it's more important to me for the government not to enshrine or recognize marriage than for gay marriage to be legal. And that's the way I've always seen it, and it's the way I see all of these identitarian issues. When you have people saying, like, well, what's the Republican Party going to do for black people? And it's like, well, how about nothing in particular? How about you vote based on what's actually right instead of, like, asking, like, how am I going to get specifically tribalistically benefited from this, right? And to me, that's just, like, a really easy standard to hold people to. But I guess it's somehow radical.
But it's also like, if you look at it, because it's radical because you go back to the root. And the reason why marriage even got into the law in the first place, why government got involved, is because progressives, eugenicists, which are the real progressives, they wanted to
stop race mixing, right?
Yeah, they wanted to stop race mixing, so they got the government involved in marriage.
Yeah,
and then
actually, you know who taught me that? Desiree.
Take-
Just Thinking Out
Yeah,
Loud. I saw her at the International Conference of Men's Issues. We were talking about this issue, and she was like, well, yeah, the origin of the state recognizing marriage had to do with stopping race mixing. And I was like, I didn't even know that.
I knew.
Yeah.
I knew about that.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's basically, it's like the progressive, there's always been like this. Like, progressives have always been, they didn't never changed. I'm sorry, they just didn't. It's like, that's a lie. It's like feminists didn't change. Like, political ideologies, they stay put more when people like to believe. And that's like so funny when the Democrats, they try to get credit for gay marriage, even though they were the ones who instituted the marriage being straight only in the first place. Like, they took credit for getting rid of segregation, even though they were the one that started it. Like, sorry, but if you create a problem and then fix it decades later, then it's not then we shouldn't celebrate you for admitting that you did, for not even admitting that you did wrong and then rectifying it, and then ignoring that you did wrong in the first place and still take credit for it. That's like stabbing someone and then making sure they get into hospital. Like, what the fuck?
Well, you know what's funny though is they totally recognize this in principle, right? When like because like they don't reward allies for being woke. They say, well, you're just fighting against the oppression that you perpetuate by existing. So you've done that which you ought to be expected to do, right? You haven't gone above and beyond, right? So they recognize this in principle. Just seems they're a little bit selective about when I don't know.
That's like the whole idea about, if I may go back to the LGBTQ stuff, thing is that it's when the LGBTQ events say that gay males should not have their own children because they're white, then they kind of like admit that they don't really give a shit about gay males anymore. Like, they argue against our having rights.
And that's another thing too that I think is kind of bizarre. A lot of people, they really, really let the perfect be the enemy of the good when it comes to like family planning and that sort of thing. Like, a lot of like kind of tradcon people, like they might actually oppose like gay adoption, right? And
yeah,
like,
no,
when you look at Western societies, like, we can't even guarantee that children have two parents, but then they want to jump the shark and say, oh no, we can't have two parents if they're the same sex, right? Like, as if that's somehow going to be more toxic and destructive than single motherhood.
No, there have actually been studies on that. It's that single motherhood is like, if people say that the heterosexual family is optimal, then single motherhood is the worst family structure that involves parents in period. Like, but then the same people say like, no Christian would ever support gay people adopting children or having foster kids. Like, okay, so the Christian thing, according to those so-called Christians, the reason why I said so-called Christians is going to be a parent pretty soon, they rather have kids suffering or starving or being abused or dying in care facilities, rather than them being gay couples. So they would rather have kids die alone without any love than daring those of gay parents. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't really see the Christian in there. Like, are they a complete hypocrite?
Yeah, well, and that's a similar argument that people will make against a lot of pro-lifers, right? Which doesn't really hold up as well for the pro-life argument, I don't think. But then what makes it even worse is, like, a lot of Christians will use their Christianity to say, this is why I support the welfare state, because they view it as charity. And like, that I think pisses me off more than anything. Like, is a Christian who is a leftist telling me to my face that they support welfare because of their religion, telling me that like they support the thing I hate the most because of their religion and are willing to force it on me at gunpoint. And then they'll also
Yeah,
turn around and pretend that they support things like separation of church and state. And like, the woman I'm thinking of, she's a fucking lawyer. And I'm just like, how are you this dumb? Like, how did you get a law degree and you're still this fucking stupid and worthless?
Don't you remember our last stream where I said that people can be educated and high IQ and still be dumber than people who have never been inside a school and have the IQ of 70? Don't you remember when I explained that?
Yeah, well, and it's true. It's just, but it's just,
It's true.
But like, okay, with
That's why
a
people-
law degree though, there's a particular aptitude for
Yeah,
just
that's
kind
true.
of raw logic, you know?
Well,
Like you think that would filter, but no.
Well, I remember, I don't know if you've seen it or not. This guy called Legal Eagle made like the dumbest video possible. Like, the idea was that pretty much he argued that, is a defense of the behavior of Carol Danvers in the Captain Marvel movie. Oh yeah, sure. So this guy touched her map, so that's why it was okay for her to steal his motorcycle. It was really this retarded. So having a law degree doesn't make doesn't show that you are smart or even sane, because this. First of all, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that this would never fly in a court. Like never.
Yeah. Maybe I bring up a joke that that I see from Family Guy, kind of very related. It's when Peter, he named his place Hell, and then the devil said from hell, "No, you cannot name it Hell. It's my name. I need to trademark it." Then the devil asked everybody inside of Hell, "Is anybody here a lawyer?" And everyone in Hell raised their
They all
hand.
raise their hand. That was a good one.
So yeah, you are onto something about lawyers being quite dumb. Often. That's true. Definitely true.
I'm at the point where I'm cynical enough that I think the only good lawyer is Nick Rekieta, and I like all of the other ones. I'm just like hyper skeptical. I'm just like, no, like you just seem like the devil to me.
Basically, like all the lawyers, they're like pack up in hell. It's so funny.
They told me I should have been a lawyer. I was in mock trial, which was very fun, but I don't know, there are some kind of libertarian ANCAP lawyers, right? I looked into it, but like even those ones are like, yeah, we're working within this system that we fundamentally think is corrupt and evil, but I mean, fuck it, it's gonna exist either way. And I'm just like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that attitude. Like, I just feel like this is not a good life path.
But like rather than that and being like rather have an evil system run by good people than having an evil system run by evil people.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I guess the way that Molyneux likes to talk about it is, it's like saying, hey, let's let's infiltrate the mob, let's infiltrate the mafia, and then take it over, and then eventually we'll turn it into a charity. Oh, hey, we have Church of Entropy, our friend Jen in the stream. Nice to see you, brah. Jen, if you want to hop on, I did toss the Hangouts link in there. So, okay, the lesbian question, I feel bad because maybe I didn't prepare well enough. We don't have enough teeth to really argue that the lesbians are trying to take over the world. We don't have Black Knight Fool, so I don't know if we can make the case without him. It's kind of his white whale, you know?
I have something to say about the lesbians, if I may.
I remember when Magdalene Burns was a thing on Prince of Queens channel, and that's how I got introduced to TERFs and like lesbians, like political lesbians. Even though I think that she was actually just like insane, but I thought it was hilarious because her arguments against Prince of Queen were so stupid.
But like not all like TERFs would be like political lesbians, and also like thinking of political lesbianism, that makes absolutely no sense. Like, not that they are going political, they're being homosexual for political reasons. Like, it doesn't make sense that women are going to be homosexual for political reasons. You know what I'm saying?
I think it would make more sense than gay men, because women's sexuality is pretty natural.
You
What'd
know,
you say?
that actually is an interesting angle to this we didn't talk about, is because MGTOW is a little bit like the reciprocal to political lesbianism, but without the sexual element, right? MGTOW, of course, they get smeared with that, this idea that, like, because they're choosing to avoid marriage with women, and often choosing to avoid association with women, just out of, you know, self-defense, which, again, I'm going to state very clearly, is incredibly reasonable. It's perfectly reasonable, perfectly defensible. They have absolutely no guarantee otherwise to their basic safety and basic rights and basic freedoms. But then everybody says, oh, well, you're just a bunch of fags then. Oh, I said the F word. Oh, it's my channel, so I get to. Whatever, we'll see what happens.
Well, okay, here, the F word is our word,
Dude,
just
all
like
of
the
the
N word.
channels, we're all getting
Yeah,
nuked on
yeah.
December 10th or whatever anyway, so whatever, I don't even care. Let's make a new channel. Just make a new channel.
But, like, but like, if you just compare these family structures, right? If there were to be a heterosexual couple, man and woman being married and then having kids, compared to a homosexual couple where two males get married and they have one biological child each who are about the same age. What kind of those relationships would be safer for children and fathers when it comes to divorce or domestic violence? If answer that question, it's a pretty obvious answer if you think about it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
based
it's
on the
gonna be the gay
stats,
one.
right? It's the gay males that have the least.
Yeah, because if they get divorced, they can just, well, they have one kids each because they cannot have the same kid. So from that works. And if somebody calls the other one like, and there is no like primary aggressor model when it comes to like if you get attacked by a female, then the police are not going to arrest her. But if two guys are at it, then it's more fair. Like the system doesn't discriminate, and neither will like when it comes to alimony or child custody laws do either, because it's both guys. There's no women involved.
This reminds me of that video I had watched earlier. I don't recall her ever mentioning anything about lesbian partner violence. And I feel like among lesbian issues, that probably should be top tier, right? If domestic violence is a thing, which I'm kind of skeptical, I think that it's actually really, really wildly overblown.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, right. I mean, it feels like you're not allowed to say that. Like it's like denying something, but I think it is largely overblown, and I would guess that like probably even among lesbians it's probably overblown too.
Yeah.
Even though most people like they like to kind of take that at face value and use it as a silver bullet. It's like, oh, see, look, all the lesbians are beating the crap out of each other, and it's like, well, you know, maybe this notion that people who are in intimate relationships maybe are actually not that violent towards each other, and that it's actually not that kind of a thing. Like it's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like if you're in a relationship with someone, generally it means you're doing the opposite of violence with them. And then if things start to get bad or even unpleasant, then you start to distance yourself, right? Like
Yeah,
It's
I
like-
don't know. I'm maybe one of the few healthy people that just like when our when people are not violent with us or just toxic in general.
But like also something I think about, I think it's definitely overblown because you never hear more people speaking about how much men are killing, are beating their women to death and killing their wives all the time. You hear nobody speaking of this more than Australian feminists. You look at the country all over the world where men are killing their wives more than anywhere else is Australia. Like, does anybody believe that? Anybody with half a brain cell believe that? No. They just talk about it more than the rest
Well,
of the
unless they are married to those women are married to a kangaroo or any other wildlife in Australia, of course it's gonna kill them.
well, yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe because they're
That's not
Australian, they're just more deadly naturally, right? Like Australian men just got like
Yeah.
like venomous ball sacks and And crazy kangaroo
Venomous
thighs
ball
for
sack.
Venomous ball sacks filled with patriarchy.
just full of patriarchy. That's where the term toxic masculinity originates. It's actually a term from the upside down land of Australia.
Well, the thing I
It's
used to live in
great.
South Africa has also been upside down, technically.
Yeah, right. No, I'm just
Yeah,
we
everything
all
in
know
Australia wants to
Australia's
kill
not a
you.
real country. It's just a meme. Just an elaborate meme.
Yeah, especially when you hear people from Australia speak. They speak like, imagine if you like trying to speak English in a silly way. That's basically Australia.
No, that's called Glasgow.
I mean, I'm Scottish, so I basically don't think that. But still, you get your point.
Honestly, you can play the movie The Wizard of Oz and Crocodile Dundee and put them next to each other. Identical. It's the same movie. It's all just a fantasy land.
That kind of reminds me of something quite hilarious. There was when you guys have all gone to high school math, basically. We had like math class, we're like speaking math. And then this guy, he was basically talking about binary numbers. And then I basically mentioned, but what about non-binary numbers? And he was like, and I was like, oh, no. Let's not go into imaginary numbers now. Wait, you don't get it?
Wait, I heard the last bit of it.
Okay, I tried.
Sorry.
We were speaking about binary numbers, right? Binary numbers. Then I mentioned, but what about
It kind of fell flat.
Like, this is funny because it's an imaginary. Like, if people who are into math would find it funny, that's the point.
Well, I know
guess
that
most of you
imaginary
are.
numbers are a thing. I missed the setup a little bit. I was reading, Terrence said, I think a lot of female perpetrated DV involves high levels of drunkenness. But, like, I don't know. Like, don't men drink more than women? Like, or is it like the lesbians are trying to keep up with the men and then, like, they're littler and they didn't take that into account and then, like, that's what's... Or is it the kind of alcohol? Like, is it like the Franzia has like a meanness to it? Like, I don't know. I know that when I get drunk, I say a lot of mean things on social media, but that's not the same as like hitting a bitch.
Well, I guess if they don't believe in gender differences and they drink the same as a man, then they're probably very drunk.
Then they'll probably fucking vomit their face off. Like, or, because they don't have the body to take as much as a male would. But, no, I think that a big reason why there's this lesbian on lesbian, like, domestic violence, or why it's more prevalent in lesbian relationships is simply because women are really never told not to hit.
Yeah.
I know it's also more prominent in gay relationships. Well, it's always compared to straight, but because it's the most numerous one. But
also, for example, it does sort of make sense because if you have two men fighting, you can like seriously fuck each other up.
I was also gonna say that.
Like women just like slap each other and like tug on each other's hair. I don't know.
There's also, there's probably more emotional abuse.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, like okay, so have you guys ever watched The L Word?
No.
I watched it a little bit. I thought it was really boring. I wasn't really that into it, but like in like the opening credits, there's like a little scene where they have like those like particle boards with like crime scenes, right? With like the yarn and like the names and everything, right? There's like one of those featured in it, and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's totally this show, right? I don't know. Like there's sort of this natural capacity for gay drama, right? Which is that you create like bi-directional love triangles immediately. Because everybody's potentially attracted to everyone. which I think is especially true among lesbians, right? Because they're all like at least semi-feminine women. I don't think there's as much of like a top-bottom dynamic with lesbians. Whereas like with gay men, you might have kind of a little bit of like a pseudo creation of natural gender roles, right? And that some men are like clearly way the fuck far down one spectrum or the other. And then in that case, like your love triangle of gay men wouldn't have like the bi-directionality that it does, where anybody could be after anyone if like you have that going on. Whereas with lesbians, that's more muted. So I think that also would does this make sense? Do you guys get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, like if you have three lesbians, any one of them might be after either of them, which could also be true for gay men, except that if any of the gay men are like really like heavily top or heavily bottom, then like that might limit it for them.
Yeah, like I am basically, you get kind of makes sense, but it's a very foreign concept to me because I would never like want to be like a top or bottom relationship, or basically just have a manly relationship. Does that make sense?
Well, no, like I'm the same way. Like I don't want to be like in one or the other, because I feel like why limit yourself either way? Like you do whatever you do, and it also depends on who the other person is too, right? Like it feels weird to define yourself in a role before there's another person, if that makes sense. But that's
Right.
Like
Switch
you can't
maps,
define
right?
human sexuality based on orientation, right? It's like trying to define all buildings based on their height.
That also makes sense.
Yeah, and like that's why have you guys ever seen the movie Kinsey? The movie about Kinsey.
Nope.
I don't think I have.
I think it's actually a really good movie. And I think it explores this whole question of like I guess bisexuality, right? Because that was a big part of it, is that like you watch this movie when you're in high school and you guess, oh, everybody's somewhat bisexual because there's a scale or whatever. But like I think there's a lot to it. Like I think it makes a lot of sense. And if you think about it, it is kind of more logical that people fall somewhere on that continuum rather than that everybody's just kind of hardwired one way or another. Particularly for women, right? Like women are like women are kind of more flexible that way, whereas men were kind of closer to, I think, being purely one or the other. But again, all generalities.
I think you have a point, because some gay guys would never allow themselves to get fucked, literally.
A completely different technical note. Who's echoing here?
I am not echoing. That is what?
I'm
You guys are
muted.
both saying I'm echoing. How?
I don't know. I have my headset on.
I haven't been echoing the whole time. That doesn't even make sense.
Everyone was echoing just until now. Somebody, thankfully, just muted.
It's my fault. I forgot to mute myself when I stopped talking.
Yeah, I was just talking while it was echoing.
That's great. Now it's good.
And I was
Just wanted to
falsely
get rid of
accused
that.
on my own channel.
What?
I'm calling Diana Davison.
What?
To deal with these false accusations. I want to make everybody listen to the L Word theme song, because it's basically my favorite song. It's so good. Let's see, I think I'll just play it. It's so good.
Girls in tight dresses who drag with mustaches. Chicks driving fast on canoes with long lashes. Women who long love lust. Women who give. This is the way, it's the way that we live.
It's so good. I love it.
Talking, laughing, loving, breathing, fighting, fucking, crying, drinking, riding, winning, losing, cheating, kissing, thinking, dreaming. This is the way, it's the way that we live. It's
That's like my
It sounds-
ringtone. I just like
It sounds
greatest
like a
song of all
fucking
time.
game or some shit.
It's so good.
Yeah.
That's the best minute of the L word. In that 1 minute, you've seen all the best things. Also, the chick at the bottom in this picture here, if you're looking at the screen, like, the chick at the bottom who's getting, like, her neck licked, looks like Theron Meyer, but from the profile side. Anyway,
Yeah.
I just had that up.
It's just a show about lesbians then?
It's just a show about lesbians doing lesbian stuff.
Wasn't like there this other show about lesbians, Orange is the New Black? Or was it about something else?
That was about women in prison, but that kind of meant it was basically about lesbians.
Oh, my bad then.
But yeah.
Like, hey,
Just, I literally never want to hear that L Word's intro song ever again. You know what? Fuck you. Fuck you. That song is so good. No, Queer as Folk is gay. Queer as Folk is gay. The L Word is superior. Just on the theme song.
I mean, the actual music is not actually pretty
That's
good,
a
but
good
the
song.
lyrics
so-
are just what?
I wish that I was friends with Turbo Autism so that I could twist his arm into making a Eurobeat remix of the L Word theme song. Oh well. It's good to have dreams.
Hey, don't give up on your dreams. Also, if you can explain to me what Eurobeat is, maybe I could help with that.
You don't know what Eurobeat is?
Eurobeat is the greatest genre of all time. It's basically perfect music. Oh, that wasn't a very good description, was it?
But
It's like...
is there like a song that I might know?
So it's
that's
very...
Eurobeat?
If you know, like, Gas, 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 or Night of Fire... Or, have you ever seen the Six Flags commercials? With that guy dancing?
Oh, you mean like the Venga Boys theme?
Right,
that one?
so that little jingle, that theme, that gets used in a song called EK by TriStar. Which I don't know who did it first. I feel like the Venga Boys stole it.
Probably. They're very big
But
fans.
they made it slow and gay. The better version is like Eurobeat's really, really fast. It's like over 130 plus like beats per minute. It's very, very fast, and the way you dance to it is para-paraing, where you step from side to side and wave your arms around like a Nazi. It's produced by
So that's why it's called Eurobeat.
Yeah, it's produced in Italy, and then it's sung in broken English, and then sold in Japan. And then the music is used in all the Initial D games where you have like race cars. It's the most autistic form of music, and it's literally perfect. All of the music is about like fire and gasoline and cars screeching and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So that's like what became of the music scene. Like, you know the song by Laura Branigan, Self Control, from the 80s? Which originally was an exact same version, just sung by an Italian man.
Or is it Stop Your Self-Control?
You take me self, you take my self-control.
It's like when a woman sings there is one that's like that in Eurobeat. But Avex actually this morning...
I'm just thinking that's maybe like Daft Punk. One guy, his father was a producer who made all of these 80s disco things like Boney M and stuff, and then in the 90s they used that equipment and the background from their nepotism to make that kind of electro sound, which I guess Eurobeat is part of. It's interesting.
Yeah, like with Eurobeat, it's kind of like the 80s happened and all the Flashdance and all that, and then with Eurobeat, they just kept going. Like, everybody else was like, okay, that's enough neon and flashing lights and crazy synth and everything. And then they're like, no, let's just do this more and faster and crazier and add screeching car noises to it. And then, like, Eurobeat just kind of, like, went into this weird corner where it's always been the apex of music. If the aliens show up, I'm showing them Eurobeat as, like, the first thing.
This is sort of topic, but what if we got a radical or, like, political lesbian on the show sometime.
I've reached out to some lesbians. Like when Black Knight Fool will link his lesbian videos, I'll comment in them, and then like I never get a response from the person who actually makes the video. I get a response from like their orbiters being like, "How do you misogynists even find this video?"
That's why I just like leave mean comments in the videos calling them lesbian incels.
I don't even leave mean comments.
Did you show them your gay card?
Yeah, right.
Yes. They say I'm a trans.
That just means male, right? They're not. They won't be deceived.
Yeah, but
yeah, I don't know. I guess what else is missing? Like I felt like maybe I'd be able to kind of square this circle and really build up the lesbian conspiracy, but I just feel like I'm at a loss. Like there's different directions to go in, but it just doesn't come together. It's just it's like you're trying to make dough and there's just too much water and it's just mush. I don't know.
Like lesbians, they are basically, they have all the rights they can need, and well, like there's not like I can't see any drawback about being lesbian. Like it just seems like so mundane. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. Like it's like
yeah, of course a gay person would think that. You're like, oh, there's no dick involved. That sounds boring.
exactly. I gotta go now. I'm sorry. Bye.
they have a good time.
All right, see you later.
I was just thinking, like, I don't know which YouTuber it was who kind of got upset about the whole order of the LGBT. Like, why are the lesbians first? Like, historically...
They didn't used to be. It used to be GLB.
Oh,
They only put themselves first because a lot of gays were dying of AIDS, and then the lesbians exploited that to put themselves first.
Yeah, oh, and that was actually another interesting point. I keep mentioning this video from the homoarchy woman. And like, she mentioned that, like, yeah, there was this AIDS crisis, and she used to donate to the causes, but then at some point she was like, you know what? We're over a decade into this shit, and you fuckers won't, like, put on a condom when you're playing with each other's butts, so fuck you. You know, deepest sympathies, but I'm not giving you money or crying about it anymore. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, like, I agree with that sentiment, you know?
Yeah, is it still that prevalent in the gay scene? Like,
kinda, yeah. I mean, no. I think that overall it's declined, and it's become a little bit less, like, just gay, right? But it's still, like, overwhelmingly, disproportionately is just men who have sex with men.
But like,
I never understood that.
Like, I never don't really see that as being a problem that affects gays, because like most gay people like me, we are not like gay people that I want to date and be around, or like myself. We're not promiscuous. Like we are basically very like as traditional you can be, except that the genders aren't. If that makes sense. So that I basically want to be a virgin when I get married. If that makes sense. Unless I was really, really head over heels in love before that.
Yeah, but that's the odd thing. Like, I've never really come across this promiscuous gay people. Like, they seem to be a very effective minority if the AIDS rate is still up.
Yeah, that's true. Because
because it kind of depends on how you define it, right? I think that the overall like gay culture really synergizes with kind of just being a degenerate slut. But then I think that there's like this other category of just like hyperactive, super crazy sluts. So I think that like even among gays, there's like degrees of it. Like you can actually be a fairly promiscuous, fairly slutty gay, while still being kind of on a more conservative end of that bell curve. Which I guess is just because like there's so many insanely promiscuous gay people out there.
100%. Like that's the reason. Like if some guy was promiscuous and he wanted to fuck around, I basically would be like, I don't want to date guys like that, because that's not going to be a good environment for my children. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's also really weird because a lot of documentaries that they actually show on television, they always focus on this kind of gays, like this really old gay dude talking about how hard it was back in the day when they were really being put away or even castrated chemically or whatever. But then he went on about how he would go to these bathhouses and basically fuck 5 different guys every week. And I was like, oof, that's pretty hard. That's pretty harsh. Like random strangers, no condom, whatever. You do realize that this is a very extreme example, like the people that made the documentary. I hope that's like, it's what people tend to think about gay people, and when they watch these things, oh yeah, men are very horny, so if they're attracted to men, the other men are also very horny, so it's basically fucking all of the time, 24/7.
Well, that's the problem, is there's no gatekeeper, and I think that it's a way that men are hardwired, that you kind of want like the hunt, right, of trying to pursue someone and having this whole like game of kind of flirting and all of that excitement. But then if it's two men, it just immediately spirals out of control into sex immediately, because nobody's trying to like stop it or resist. So
But some of us are like that, because like mainly, like if I were someone, I would gatekeep the hell out of him, because if he just wanted to fuck me, then how would I know that he wanted to stay with me? Like, no. Like if somebody wants to be with me, then we don't have to fuck. We're gonna do it when we have been married, when we're like getting in. Then I would like be married to someone, then I can fuck him, or like while we are like considering that when we are in that stage. But like I wouldn't want to do it like with someone I wasn't going to like think of marrying, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Well, it doesn't
maybe.
make sense to me as a heterosexual, but that's just how I feel about women, you know?
Yeah, and also like if you want to like be with someone, if you want someone who's gatekeeping, then that's hard to get, and something hard to get, then most guys and women, by the way, probably want to pursue it more. So if a guy is gatekeeping and he's very, very cute and very, very good human being, like not promiscuous, then he is probably going to get a lot of guys wanting him because of that, because they want the challenge of a gatekeeper.
Yeah, they create the demand by limiting the supply.
Yeah, that's why I've been doing my entire dating life, which is very short, by the way, because I'm only 21. But yeah, if I were to date someone, I would basically be like, I would only have sex with him if I was really head over heels, or if we were like getting married, which I wouldn't technically need to be in love with someone when I get married, because feelings can evolve after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and part of it too is like if you've done the hookup thing, you kind of realize it is kind of overblown. Like it is probably better to kind of play it more conservatively. I think that a lot of what the tradcons say about the way relationships are, like waiting for marriage and that sort of thing, and it being a more fulfilling sort of a thing, I think a lot of that actually does make a lot of sense. And I think that it seems like now there's been enough of a backlash to the overall progressive agenda that you do see a kind of a rise in like gay conservative men. Which
Yeah, like the majority.
yeah, like 2 years ago I wouldn't have said it's a thing. But the more I've been online, it's been like really easy to find like a lot of gay men are pretty much people who just like want essentially kind of like the basic tradcon relationship, but it just happens to be 2 men involved.
Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I couldn't be 100% accurately described by any other way, because like if you like why would it, that's the thing I don't get with like some straight tradcons, like, no, gay people, you shouldn't be allowed to like be married and have kids, like so they don't like gay people because gay people are being too promiscuous, but then they want to limit they want to make sure that serious relationship between gay men is as difficult as possible. You get it?
And I wonder if there's a lesbian reciprocal to it. Like is this kind of what happened, is that a lot of the progressive narrative got like so hard invested in like drag kids and shit like that now you have like gays and lesbians who for the longest time just wanted to be seen as normal, who are like pushing back on it and then kind of doubling down on conservatism. I don't know the degree to which it's a backlash or if it's just kind of a more natural thing, but I don't
So it's
know.
natural.
Hard
That
to
would
say.
be interesting. That would be interesting.
Well, because I'm thinking about this whole Groyper War thing, right? And it's like, in my experience online, is like there's a lot of gay men out there who are kind of like more traditionally conservative than a lot of these so-called conservatives.
That's very true. Very, very true. Like, some of those conservatives, they basically be like, no, basically, I have hooked up with this many girls, like, but that's how a culture is, and we need to conserve it. Like, what? Yeah, so you're definitely right about that. They are pretty retarded in that regards, because, like, no, I'm basically more conservative, because if why would they be younger than me and not a virgin, and I be older and a virgin waiting for marriage if they were the traditional one?
Yeah. I mean, there are
You are
those.
right.
In like the conservative movement who still like do that sort of thing, but I think that I would imagine, I guess, for a straight male to be a virgin has like a higher stigma than for a gay male.
Oh yeah, we also noticed that like girls like, no, I don't want to be with a virgin. Like, I was like, what? So you don't want to be with a guy unless he have been with someone else before? Like, why? Because they're like, oh, but he wouldn't have sex and be that good. I was like, yeah, but isn't relationship more than sex though? And if somebody have been in a relationship with several people before, then it probably more likely to be something wrong with them because they have all the relationship failed, right?
The boundary issues and maybe some psychological issues, definitely. But yeah, it's kind of like I don't really remember my first time, but I'm pretty sure I lied about being a virgin to that chick. Like, didn't want to seem inexperienced.
Yeah, my mother always told me. My mother told me to lie to girls to get them to fuck me, because, and even though like that, which is kind of funny though, but especially because she's like, especially because she's like an old school feminist who still say that you should lie to women to fuck them because that's just how women are, and you cannot get away from it.
That's based. That's really based.
I know, it's kind of hilarious actually, but he's right. Like, who knows a woman better than someone who is a woman?
Yeah, but I don't really know, like, if lesbians have those, like, there must be some that have that kind of sentiment. Then again, unlike men, women are being indoctrinated. From my position, it looks like that they're like this whole victim status. Men don't really feel that comfortable playing the victim for whatever reason.
I know why men don't feel comfortable playing the victims. That's because if you're being the victims, that means that you have failed to defend what's yours, and that you are being subjugated and emasculated. And if you're a man, that's an uncomfortable thing to admit.
Well, and this is something that I think that in general, people in like Western cultures, we're biased to view things as being sociological or culturally influenced when it actually might be more biological. Because like Terrence had mentioned in the chat, part of the problem of trying to create like an LQ conspiracy is that a lot of women just kind of like naturally can turn against men. And I think there's something to that, you know. There's a saying we always say, which is that, you know, feminism isn't changing or influencing women, it's reflecting what women want. And it's kind of a black-pilled perspective, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think it's, you know, as shitty as it is, like, that's something you have to give a little bit of weight to.
That's true. Because like,
maybe there's a way to change it. I'm kind of optimistic in the sense that I think that women can man up, and I think that there are cultural influences that can have an impact, but it's gonna have to be a pretty strong momentum in the opposite direction.
I believe that's possible because women are basically hardwired to care about the survival of their own offspring, and women are also more likely to connect with sons than daughters easier because I've read something about parent and children relationships are far more easier if they are opposite sex. And there is far more conflict between parent and child if they have the same gender. So therefore I believe that women tend to naturally drift more to their sons rather than their daughters on average. And that's probably the reason why women would not want their sons to be destroyed in society. So therefore they might turn against what feminism is nowadays, or mainstream feminism. Hashtag not all, but most.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a real phenomenon, right? You do see a lot of femme-RAs, and like their huge motivation is that they have a son and then realize that, oh, these things that affect all men now include someone that I actually care about, right? Like, it wasn't enough that they were married to a man, but the fact that they have a male offspring now suddenly, like, that ups the ante. But at the same time, like, if that were overwhelmingly true, then, like, all this shit would have been settled, like, within one generation, you know?
Well, I'm
I
not
think it might be
sure,
the
like,
exception to the rule.
I think in the West, go on.
Yeah, that's probably the reason why the feminists like saying that being single and childless is the best life you can ever have, because then women doesn't realize that.
Yeah, but also in the West, like with all the, I don't want to say falling birth rates because that's kind of been it's a statistical fact, but it's, people will always say, oh, this guy talks about birth rates, all right. But I think it's becoming more rare that people have more than one child, and the chance that you have a girl is slightly higher. So the number of women that have that kind of connection, I mean, naturally you would assume, hey, these women probably have a father, like biologically that makes sense, or a brother or a grandfather. And why the fuck do so many seem to only start to really care once they have a son? And I've come across that phenomenon quite often, actually.
Well, actually, I know why. It's because women are not invested into genetic legacy of people who are not technically their own children. Like, women are to put their own kids first and foremost, which means that all other family members must, from a bioevolutionary standpoint, be put aside for your children. This means that your partners and your siblings and your parents, they are secondary to your children. They always come after them, according to bioevolutionary. And I also can say, and that's also why the women are more likely to care about their children, their sons, rather than the brothers and partners, even though they are very close to those. And speak about, I know that my old mother thinks that care about me like an infinitum more than she care about my dad or her brothers or her dad when my grandfather was alive. So I think that's why it's more invested. It's more in their genetic. It's more evolutionary driven to care about your offspring rather than to care about the rest of your family. If you're a woman,
it's part of the big irony that people feel like women are more empathetic, but when you look at it like real empathy, I don't know. Like, I feel like men tend to extend empathy much more easily to people they're not even connected to, like actual empathy, and not just, oh, that's so bad, I care about this now. Like, it often feels like a virtue signal when women do it, and probably is. I don't.
Yeah, there is a huge body of kind of gesturing towards like pretending to care about things that's actually often like really like either passive aggressive or manipulative in some way, and a lot of people, they don't pick up on it. Like, I remember like I wouldn't notice any of these things, and it wasn't until after I had kind of had some of it pointed out to me that then I realized, like, oh, like these are ways that people manipulate you, and that like you can't just take it at face value.
Yeah. Also, yeah, like you said, manipulation seems to be something that comes more natural to women in general. Like, I don't want to generalize, but in general, that's what I want to say.
I guess what I have to take away from this though is I really have some sympathy towards some of the TERFs. Like, I've always kind of
So do
seen
I.
them as at least kind of trying to apply these principles of feminism consistently and sticking to their guns and taking some hard stances. And there are some parallels in the issues of the gay community with the lesbian community, and I think that there might be kind of a conservative coalition there, which, I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen, but maybe that's where I'll have to take this from here. I'll try to find some kind of radical lesbian allies and see what they think of anti-feminism. If they're willing to just admit that, there's a point where your radical feminism just needs to MGTOW from feminism.
Yeah, one of my friends I had in high school, she was basically not a feminist. She didn't hate all feminism, but she was like against feminism in general, and she was a lesbian. So it's like being against feminism and being a lesbian makes sense, because a lot of the lesbians are themselves pretty conservative, because a lot of the lesbians doesn't, and also that kind of like, also the TERFs and the conservative lesbians tend to agree on that, because they don't really want to be forced to say that if you don't like dick, then you're a bigot.
Yeah, because here's the thing: is any transsexual who's a cool person, who is like fine with how they are and wants to just go about their own business and mind their own business and not force it on anyone, they're going to have a lot in common with someone like me. They're going to have a lot in common with a lesbian who just wants to be a woman who's with women, and right? Like it's pretty easy to imagine the archetype of anybody on the entire alphabet soup spectrum who could just be a conservative person.
Well, you can be trans, lesbian, or gay, but you will probably not be LGBTQ, whatever, because LGBTQ are basically a leftist ideology at this point. So,
well, right, yeah, we're all, yeah. At this point, there's a question of whether or not we use that term, I guess, to define people who happen to have those characteristics versus people who actually identify with it. And I guess I'd be someone who never really identified with that because it's stupid. Like, but that's the thing too, is you see a lot of people who are like in the more skeptic community, even the ones who identify as anti-SJW, they actually they get really offended at adding things to that, right? Because they see LGBTQ as like this sacred, immutable thing that they support and took pride in supporting.
Like, I basically hate the whole that concept. Like, what the fuck does Stephen Q stand for?
What does the Q stand for?
Yeah, like, I'm not going to label myself something I don't even know what it means. Like, I'm sorry.
That's the thing, is queer. I mean,
But
that
that's a
should be
slur.
all, right? It should just be Q. The whole thing is just, it's all, oh, you're a bunch of weirdos. You're weird for some reason, right? And I think that is kind of succinct.
But to call someone that term is like calling a black person the N-word.
I never really thought about it that way.
I have all the time. That's why I say that.
I've asked myself a lot of times, like, if there's an L and a G, whether you need the Q. Because I always thought that queer was just another word for homosexual, growing up, of course. And I still don't really understand what else it supposedly means. Like, genderqueer doesn't really register as a sensible concept to me.
Well, and I think gender queer is basically a PC reframing of gender fuck. And gender fuck is where you're kind of like non-binary, but like in a deliberately abrasive way to make a political statement. And that's actually quite old. That's something that, yeah, is like decades old. But then on the other side of it, you have like a larger queer movement that's not even particularly sexual. Like Pill Eater was on the stream last week, and he had made a video about like overall like queer cultures. And it was just this idea of like things that are just kind of weird or countercultural or in some way subversive. And it didn't necessarily incorporate like a sexual aspect. And of course, when you put Q on this alphabet soup spectrum, you know, then it's no longer Like that aspect of it's no longer relevant, and then all you're left with is like, yeah, it just means that you're gay, basically. So
Like,
it's all
just
dumb.
an example, like you might have seen one of my streams. I have long hair and I have a beard. So if I put on lipstick, would that make me somehow queer?
Well, it would be a
If
queer
you
thing
like
too,
queer
right?
sometimes, so if you identify that, so yeah.
Like it's very hard to grasp what exactly. It's not tangible in a meaningful way.
If you go to an LGBTQ convention, right, you'll basically go there and you will see the majority of the people are not going to be LGBT or Q, or T. They will be call themselves queer. They will say that they are non-gender this and gender queer, gender binary, and gender blah blah blah, and they will say that they are some sort of pansexual, demisexual, asexual spectrum. But in reality, they are cisgender, look completely male or completely female. They are heterosexual, dating only men and women of the opposite sex, but they are like hardcore leftists. And that's the only thing that separates them from straight people. And they are basically the majority of the LGBTQ community at this point.
But that's the other odd thing, like the gay people that I know. Like when I say gay in that respect, I say lesbians and homosexual men. They never really make it a topic. Like it's not what they identify as, in the sense of this is a very important aspect I need to share in a conversation. Like just like a straight person doesn't come up to you and says, "Hey, I'm heterosexual. What's up?"
Yeah, no, and honestly, that's the thing that pisses me off the most about the whole Turning Point USA drama is, Charlie Kirk walking around with his black gay pet, and literally this guy's up there because of his sexual interests, right? And that's why you have them asking this question, like, what does anal sex have to do with advancing conservatism? And it's like, yeah, you literally just made conservatism about that, and that's so stupid. And there's something very, very it's grotesque. It's kind of gross to like walk around and define yourself based on what you're sexually into. And I've always found there to be kind of an invasive part of that, right? Like it's not any of your business. But then of course to make that your identifier is to literally put that front and center and to make it like the first thing you're telling people.
But it's like also about I identify as this. That's like most people who are either gay or lesbian or bisexual usually doesn't tend to identify as being gay, lesbian, or bisexual. They tend to just be gay, lesbian, or bisexual because they are gay, lesbian, or bisexual. And this is the same way that I have light skin, I have blue eyes, and I am gay. Like that's just not like I don't identify as having blue eyes. I have blue eyes. Like I don't identify as gay. I am.
Yeah, it's if you consider it an immutable characteristic of your personality or of your being, then you don't identify it. You are it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know. Perhaps to say you have the orientation is actually a more linguistically preferable way to say it, right? Because that way it's not so much an identifier, but it's just a thing you have.
I do like pushing back on this whole thing though, because as Prince of Queens and everything over here, one of the things that early on really turned me on to both MRAs and conservatives in general was going on YouTube and finding people like the Honey Badgers and realizing that this isn't just all these straight white guys like I had been told my whole life, and it did expand my mind in the way that I viewed things potentially. So I do think that there is an actual justifiable purpose to playing a little bit of the identity politics game, but at the same time, I mean, that Rob Smith guy, he could be worse, but he certainly ain't great,
Yeah. Do you guys like Cardi B? Who likes Cardi B?
Oh my god.
It's so true because he is actually Charlie Kirk's pet. Tree of Logic even call him Sugar Booty Rob. Because
what a living fuck.
Because she basically said that all the blacks and Singaporeans USA, they're basically the slaves in the Republican plantation rather than the Democratic plantation, because they basically listen to Charlie Kirk, and when Charlie Kirk says them to quiet down, they quiet down. They do everything as he say. Like,
That's why they call him Massa Charlie. It's Massa Charlie.
yeah, they call him Master Charlie. He's Master Charlie.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't think it's like I don't like taking it that far, you know, like but I do just find it, the main turnoff about Turning Point USA is just Charlie Kirk himself, you know,
his
like
face is too small.
Turning off USA. They're turning off USA.
Wait, what do you say is too small?
His face is too small.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying,
No, it's just mainly that he's, you know, he doesn't come off as very genuine, and it seems like everything is very prepackaged, and you know, like how he talks about being an evangelical, and he's like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because blah 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 and blah blah blah, and it's like, oh, so evangelical is nothing like anyone has ever described it in history. Well, thanks for letting me know. I suppose I don't know much about it. I would kind of like to get some second opinions about that. My friend is actually, I have a friend that grew up evangelical. I can ask him some more about it.
No, yeah, I used to be evangelical. And it's basically just a form of Christianity where everything is based in what's in the Bible, and you use the Bible to interpret the Bible, and you don't add in a bunch of stupid fan fiction like the Catholics and the Mormons do.
that's Protestant.
Yeah, it's very different in America, I think. Around here, that's just the main strain of the Protestants is the evangelical church.
Yeah,
But I think the Americans made it something a little different.
Kinda. Well, I guess Protestant is technically the broader category, but evangelical itself is pretty broad.
Yeah, that's true.
The odd thing around here about this whole silly billy discussion why we still don't have just official gay marriage is gay men saying, I'm a proud Catholic and I want to marry my boyfriend in a Catholic church in a Catholic mass. What? You know, they kind of don't want you in their club. They think it's a sin. Why are you proudly something that kind of defines you out of their club?
Yeah, but
It's
know,
like-
I mean, the Catholic Church has the second pope now, the fake pope, and he is basically a globalist communist. So, yeah, you know, let the women... We need a female pope, and we need gay marriage in the Catholic churches. I think that's where it belongs, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's actually true, because the Pope that there is today is the reason why Protestantism came into existence in the first place. It's like it's not feasible to have your religion organized around a Pope anymore. Sorry. But something very important I just say about, but when it comes to people saying being gay is a sin, I believe the Bible specifically say anal sex is a sin. Like not me being in love with someone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the actual intellectual attraction or whatever psychological, the emotional part itself is not defined as a sin. It's just acting on it. But then again, I'm really not a fan of religion. I just don't really understand why you would want to be part of a club that expressly doesn't want you in it.
I know, right?
Like, the Catholic Church is a stupid club. And it lets stupid people want to be in stupid clubs because they're stupid. How stupid people work.
Yeah.
Hey, these guys are homophobic. Homophobes are not good people in my book. Why the fuck would a gay person want to be with homophobic people? Yeah.
Probably because, I don't know, but some people might not believe that homophobia like exists. Or like some people might be like, that somebody being opposed to anal sex doesn't mean that they are opposed to guys kissing, if that makes sense.
Well, and the other thing, too, is it's not like every gay man is super into having anal sex. There's
Right.
plenty of people out there who they're not into butt stuff. Just like there's lots of straight people who aren't into butt stuff, you know? Like...
Or straight people are into butt stuff just with women.
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole diverse rainbow of whatever people want to do.
Wherever they want to put their shit.
Literally speaking. Oh, sorry. That was a bit too much. But,
Yeah.
but
Well,
something I need to. I
well,
need,
I
I
was
need to
gonna
bring
say I
something.
think we touched on everything that I kind of had planned out for talking about the lesbian question. I feel bad because I feel like I just kind of hit like 3 or 4 different dead ends on it and could not create a competent lesbian conspiracy. I thought maybe I could. Maybe I could really convince myself that the lesbians are the Freemasons. The lesbians are those damn Jesuits. The lesbians control the banks, but
But
It might just be the same thing as with the people who think like there's a Jewish conspiracy. The fact that these women, these lesbians, have this kind of power doesn't necessarily have to be based in a conspiracy, in a secret cabal, because that's how society is structured. They have an easy time getting this access and this power in this day and age. They don't have to meet in secret places and stuff like that. It's just how the world works right now. It's not that hard for them to do it.
yeah, and also I used to think about this. If we accept that LGBT, whatever, is a thing, then if you compare gay male and trans people in general, it's still hard for those types of people to form relationships and start families without paying a lot of money. But if you're lesbians, you don't suffer from on any of these problems. So yeah, being a lesbian is far more easier because it's easy for you to start your family than if you are gay male or if you are transgender. Like it's not really like lesbians are like they're not really victimized. If we say that other people are technically disadvantaged in one way, but the lesbians are not disadvantaged in any conceivable way that can be corrected.
In no comparable way, I would say. Like I'm not saying they have all the privilege and everything's beauty and sunshine, but compare it to trans and gay men, just getting a sperm donor or one of them takes one for the team and lets herself be fucked by some guy, and they can have a baby. And as a male couple, you have to have a surrogate mother. That's be legal.
Depending on the country, it's legal. It's legal in I think the countries that are the most surrogate-friendly country for gay couples in the world are. This is very weird, but you have to bring with me. It is Hungary, South Africa, Australia. I think
Hungary?
countries in the,
I guess they're just xenophobic then. At least it's what they tell me.
Hungary and South Africa have the most gay-friendly policies when it comes to family planning, which is very interesting to say the least. Like you don't really suspect that. Like what? It's
that's kind of a curveball. I didn't expect that. Although I guess I haven't really thought much about barriers to surrogacy, but I suppose that is a really serious issue because I know that like even with like adoption, for example, there's all kinds of situations where like something will go wrong with the paperwork or some technicality, right? And you'll have these couples that get a child, like a baby that they adopt, and then like a few months later, the government comes and says, "Oh no, actually we can't do this," and then like they lose their baby, which is like horrifying.
horrendous.
And I imagine with surrogacy, there's a lot of kind of similar issues.
Yeah, that's actually true. But it's so interesting that what just those it's a very hard time to understand that the most surrogate-friendly country for gay couples in the world would be Hungary and South Africa. That's weird. Just period. And
it's worth looking into, like the historical basis for that, because I think Hungary is very, very focused on having people who have kids that are Hungarians. Yeah. So it might be based on that.
And also, I think in South Africa they restrict surrogacy rights to citizens, so you cannot do this as a rich tourist.
Honestly, how come this isn't the current like gay issue? How come we went to trans bathrooms but not this? Like, what if Trump came out and said, "Hey, I'm gonna do a bunch of policies that help gays and lesbians adopt and have surrogacies and like support these things?
Well, I think they would, but that's the whole problem with the LGBT. Because if the trans people and the gay are in the same box, then they are going to pick one. Because that's the reason why we can't have LGBT. That's why I'm against the LGBT. You cannot have that. If you're going to have the trans right, you should do it on your own, but not for ridiculous rights, just for basic rights, like being able to, well, surrogacy and have and to have and get married, which something that affects trans people too, right? That
I
also
guess
affects
obviously.
the thing that gays and lesbians have most in common is that all of the most important issues you're gonna face are gonna have nothing to do with being gay or lesbian. Like to me, like the civil rights you're denied is like the government stealing your money in the form of taxation. You know, you're not allowed to do so many things, and like we just take it for granted. Requirements for prescriptions, for licenses. The inflated costs of education, like all of it's just caused by government, and like it's become such white noise that it's like this massive project to really fathom how expensive and awful and destructive government is, and it's shit that affects everyone. So that's why like I've
Yeah,
never
but,
really cared
it's
about
much
gay
more
issues in
important.
particular.
Much more important that some bakery is forced to make a gay wedding cake. Come on.
Yeah, right,
That's
of
the
course.
real
I'm
shit
so
out
glad.
there.
I'd rather have that. Thank God I can fucking twist some Christian's arm into making a cake for my stupid gay wedding, and then I can force it to happen in a Catholic mass.
Like, I don't even want to have a wedding. Like, I want to be married as cheaply as possible so that I can save more money to have a surrogate.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pretty strong repeal the 19th argument, just how expensive weddings are.
Yeah, like I don't even want a wedding. Like, is it legal to just to people file a marriage without a wedding? Can you do that?
No,
I think
you
on a
can.
boat
you
you
can get married
can.
at like the courthouse. Oh, Arthur Weaver in the chat says these images crack me up. Thanks, started putting on my nose. Yeah, I put together a little like lesbian slideshow. That's my new thing for these streams is I make a little like slideshow and then put like stupid rainbow hues on it so that there's at least something moving on the screen. It looks like the Hangouts thing gets frozen whenever I don't have the window highlighted, which is super gay, but whatever.
That sounds gay.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
each week I learn a little bit more, and I think the streams get just a tiny little bit better. So we'll see what happens next time.
Yeah,
Very
that's
good.
why we should make the streams a little bit more gay each time.
A little bit more. Well, that I feel like that just happens.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. You said a little bit more better. That's what I said.
Just a little gayer. So
And-
yeah, I don't know if I'll
but
have
like-
like an overall theme for next week. Probably just do a classic show and tell. But the idea is anything you find that's like interesting, you can just bring it, and it's like show and tell. Like you just say, "Hey, here's this thing I found." So
That sounds good.
yeah, you know, nice and open ended. But I think I'm gonna wrap it up now because we've been going for a couple of hours, and
Yeah.
I want to play Grim Dawn, honestly. I've been like really obsessed with it. It's been awful. I've been using like all of my days off, just like constantly playing it, because it feels like playing Diablo 2 again, back when Diablo 2 was new.
I'm so young. I was like 2 years old when that happened.
I still have to actually play Diablo 1 and 2 to get that reference, but it's on my list.
Honestly, just play Grim Dawn. Grim Dawn's great.
No,
It's
no,
really
yeah,
cool.
I
So
would
it's
probably
an
will get to that.
ARPG,
I just
right?
want
So
to.
It's that same kind of isometric thing. You run around dungeons, killing mobs and stuff, customize a character. But like Grim Dawn has this really cool post-apocalyptic flavor. And it has really nice lore. Like they did a really good job writing out the ideas of like different factions and things. It's not just kind of this vanilla like go kill some demons. Like they actually have like a cool kind of unique flavor about it. And so it's oozing with flavor overall. And the character classes aren't just like strictly kind of archetyped things. They're all kind of like balanced in their own ways and have their own different ways of kind of being combined together and stuff. So it feels different from other MMOs.
Yeah, that actually sounds kind of cool. Like, do you streams like playing games or just for yourself?
I guess I could. I haven't really tried it. I feel like I'm using kind of a shitty laptop that's like 10 years old, which it works just fine for my purposes, but I feel like if I were to try to stream while doing that, that might be pushing it, but I guess I could try. I was going to try and stream playing like Octopath Traveler when I beat like the last boss on it, but like it didn't work or something. I don't know.
It is quite fitting that it's quite fitting my YouTube channel is basically a lot about Diablo lore, other than being political as well.
Yeah, some of the Diablo lore was actually pretty cool in like Diablo 2. I think Diablo 3 was just a hot mess in terms of like the
No, I
story.
love
The game
Diablo
is
3.
fine actually. It's not scary like a Diablo game should be.
That you have a point, but I
Yeah.
still love it because I think the storyline in Diablo 3 is amazing. I love it so much.
Wait, you
I
like
think
the
it's like-
Diablo 3 story?
Yeah, I like that one too. I like all the stories in Diablo, all of them, all the games.
Yeah, because like that opening cinematic of Diablo 2, it's very iconic, you know, like I always like really viscerally remember that. And, like I thought it was like this really cool thing. And how, you know, they link this wanderer who's like the main character of the first one into the second one. Like it had this really cool feel to it. But like with Diablo 3, the problem is as like a Nephilim, you're like this chosen, destined being, and you never really felt like you were in that much danger, really, you know?
You have a point.
Yeah, and
Like-
like the world wasn't as dark in Diablo 3, and I think that's like a major criticism that they're responding to. If you've seen any of the D4 stuff, they're really trying to make it seem like grittier and just darker and scarier.
Like I'm really curious about what Diablo 4 is going to be all about because I have no idea. I need to watch the trailer, but don't spoil it, by the way.
Oh, I'm not even gonna play it. Because fuck Blizzard.
Yeah, like for me, like I don't really play that. I just want to watch the storyline on YouTube. That's funny in my opinion.
I do like that they're
Play
doing
it.
kind of an open world thing, though. That's one thing that I always thought was kind of missing from the Diablo world. Even though that's totally not the point of Diablo, but to me, I like that. I like the kind of... Honestly, I wish that more people would play, like, Ragnarok with me, but that's kind of a very dead game. People just kind of flock back to it for the nostalgia.
I didn't know it existed, but I'm also. How old is the game?
Ragnarok was a thing in like 2003 or something, but it was this Korean MMO, and it had this very cute anime style that was very pleasing to the eye.
Well, I think I was 5 years old, so
Yeah,
that's
it's
the reason why I
very
don't know.
mindless, very grindy, which I like that. I don't like games where I have to like pay a lot of attention to have skill. I like to kind of sit back, get cozy, few buttons, but just kind of like mindless killing of stuff as opposed to like cycling on cooldowns and actually being competitive with it. I think is just like tedious and not relaxing.
Yeah, I guess you have a point. Like I basically never have time for games anyway, which is kind of sad though.
That's
What
another
I-
thing I like about Grim Dawn is like a lot of these skills are just passives that upgrade your basic attack. So I have a build where I just like swing around a two-handed weapon, and I have like literally half my skill points are just shit that makes my main attack just like shoot out lightning bolts and weird shit and like do all this stuff. So I just left click is kill shit, right click is a potion, so I don't even have to like find any key on my keyboard. Which is obviously suboptimal, but kind of fun and mindless.
Sounds streamlined to me.
Yeah, that's
not
what
like-
I like it. I like it quite a lot. But
That's
I'm
not-
kind of only into the very beginning of it, so. But the nice thing too is there's no monthly subscription to it, so you know you can get sick of it, quit playing it for a year, start up again without having to pay any more money. So
Oh yeah, that makes sense actually. Do you guys want to hear something really funny about the whole topic about the thing we talked about before? And that would be that the whole reason why example, the feminists wanted to stop surrogacy for gay couples, and that is actually the whole reason as to why I stopped being a feminist.
Wait. So
Yeah.
see, because I don't really know much about. Oh, you're saying that like lesbians opposed surrogacy on the grounds that it's like exploitative.
Yeah, not just lesbian, but just leftists in general. Feminists were doing it,
Yeah.
and then that made me stop identifying as a feminist when I was like, that was like 2014-15 when that happened, and that is what mean to what kind of political persuasion I got now, which is quite interesting to say the least, because
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, because I just
Very
I've never really thought of it that much, and I guess maybe that's a topic to explore a little bit more for next week. Is like different surrogacy laws, and like because I like my intuition would just be that people don't think about it very much, so it just kind of hasn't been a priority. And that maybe there's just kind of some old trappings or like complications or whatever. But this idea that there could have been like a concerted effort on the part of feminists to really push back against it.
they're doing it in Europe though. That's why it's not legal
odd.
in most of Europe.
Like, I don't remember this kind of situation in Switzerland because surrogacy is generally banned. Like, I think the argument back then was, hey, there's so many kids who are waiting for adoption. There's not really much of a point if you can't have children normally to go through all of those hoops. Just adopt.
Well,
And I
you
get why
cannot
people
want to have-
would prefer to have a biological child in some way or another. But yeah.
Obviously. Like, for me, basically very simple. I don't want my own kids, or at least kids of my own ethnicity. Like, that's simple. I don't want to raise a kid from, like, Asia. I'm sorry. You know, I don't want to. Just kept PC, period. Like, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, like, it's
you
just
cannot-
that probably didn't come from the same. Like that would definitely be interesting to research that for a couple of countries to see why the laws are the way that they are.
I think I have the whole research for like, I basically know that about almost every single country. I know that Belgium or the Netherlands and Ireland, if you are having surrogacy in like somewhere else or something, then they are basically going to be okay with it. It's just that they have no laws surrounding it in their own country.
You mean like how in Ireland abortion was illegal, but it was okay to go to Britain, have it done there, and come back and stuff
Yeah,
like
basically.
that.
No,
Like, it's
now I'm
actually
thinking
kind of
about it,
rare.
though, isn't there like this major hypocrisy in surrogacy versus sperm jacking, right? Because in sperm jacking,
Yes.
that's just like surrogacy, except the woman like perpetrates it unilaterally and can often gank the male for child support, even if he has no idea what's going on or and obviously no consent to it, right?
There was actually a pretty extreme case in Germany, like 15 years ago or something, where this famous tennis player, Boris Becker, you kind of have to be old to remember that guy, pretty rich dude. He received a blowjob by some random lady.
Oh, and she incubated it, right? She incubated it, and then the court said that the sperm was a gift.
The court ruled that he is legally responsible financially for that child, and he didn't even gain access to spend time with it. I don't know if he wanted to, but that was part. Like he kind of wanted to have the chance to get custody, so he didn't have to pay this woman insane amounts of money. It was like, this dude received a blowjob. You don't really expect to become a father after that. Right?
Yeah, but this is how it works. It's like they always listen to the women first and foremost, and that's just so fucking dumb. They don't care about the kids first of all. That's sure, because if they did that, they wouldn't even give a shit about the women or the men.
Yeah, no, it's not women and children first. As Spacepan likes to say, it's women and women first.
Just like the bookstore on Portlandia. Women and women.
Oh yeah, the feminist bookstore. That's a funny sketch.
The lesbian that I keep mentioning, she was talking about how the lesbian culture used to be bookstores, and that's the first thing I thought of, and I was like, ah. Don't never forget what they've taken from us.
I didn't realize only lesbians would read books. But now that I think about it, I think you're right.
I want to
Yeah,
own a
that's
lesbian
actually perfect.
bookstore. I have a new dream. I want to start a lesbian bookstore.
And you can call them. You can call it Lesbo's bookstore.
Or something. Or like if I started one in Hong Kong, there has to be like a funny lesbian.
Maybe something like less, read more.
That
No,
could be
read
good.
Lesbian.
A funny thing to write in your books when you were a kid was lesbi friends.
Lesbian.
Less bi friends?
It was like, I didn't get to know you very well this year. Next year, lesbi friends.
Or I could call it the Pagina monologues. Like a page. Pagina.
Because they're pudgy.
No, like page and vagina.
I actually
No,
really
it
regret
works.
gifting both my sisters who have the same birthday the vagina monologues years back, because I've found out about this book and I thought it was a comedy, and they actually took it seriously.
Oh god.
That was a big mistake. I thought everybody who would read that would feel like that's got to be comedy, right? But that can't be real.
I remember when there were like trans women who were also on the left who were offended by the vagina monologue because they didn't feel included because not all women have vaginas apparently. And then it was Gavin McInnes were commenting on that, and they basically said, "You don't even need a vagina. You are already a big pussy."
They should have a version of the vagina monologues that's like the feminine penis monologues.
Yeah.
This is why the turf gets more ground. This is those things that I think that this is women lesbian only, but it's not enough dicks. Like, why shouldn't they be turfs?
But I still
I don't
feel
know.
like
I just feel like
could
if
you
I were a
be
lesbian and someone says I'm a woman with a feminine penis, my question would be, well, how feminine?
But I'm still asking myself, like, remember these people who did those phony papers that they got published, like the feminist papers, grievance studies or something?
Oh yeah, yeah. Prince
like, would it-
hates one of those authors.
Like,
Helen.
would there be legal penalties to making a fake feminist book that like hits all of their G-spots? Like, could we get money out of that? Like, I feel like some
Well, no,
people in our
'cause
circles would be very
SJWs,
good at
they
writing
don't
something
pay for
like that.
anything, right? But maybe it could get like some notoriety. But I don't know. This would have to
Oh,
be
yeah,
pretty well done, right? Because they'll see through to Tanya McGrath, right? Like they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The main issue is like there's not actually any money in that. Like it's gonna get you awards and praise, but money. The fact of the matter is that there's not a lot of people who actually want to read that stuff. That's why they have to force it on college students.
Oh yeah, and that's why
Yeah.
even academia in general has that problem, right? Like none of their crap gets read.
Makes sense. That's why they always like keep printing new editions every year, and that's why we need to buy new ones all the time, even though we already had the previous one.
Yeah, it's a big business, but yeah, maybe if we could make something that sells to academia, you know, there's a lot of money in that. Like make some money of the whole student loans taken out on gender studies. I want me some piece of that pie.
Yeah,
it's just
Arthur Weaver in the chat mentions they're a trans person and they're anti-intersectionality, which this is interesting. I'm finding more and more people who, you know, they identify as whatever version of sexual minority, but like aren't really super progressive, and I'm wondering if I can build this conservative coalition.
Who are you, Charlie Kirk?
Huh? Yeah, right. But so they said they visited through Rose's server. I don't know if is that Rose of Dawn? I think I might have commented on one of their videos, but I don't quite recall. But I know that sometimes Black Knight Fool links to some of her things. So, but yeah, that's one thing maybe I'll try to get a little bit more familiar with later on today.
But as a rule of thumb these days, people who have media attention and call themselves representatives of groups, the thing they all seem to have in common is that the people in those groups don't want them to represent them.
They
they
asked
group
me if
some,
I
like,
got any mass
made up. Like,
dislikes.
I'm sorry, but
The only time I got like mass dislikes was when I did my response to Faraday Speaks. The first one, none of the second one, nobody noticed.
Well, yeah, Faraday Speaks was an AstroTurf channel, and so there's the AstroTurfers gonna find it, regulate on your ass.
He's supposed to debate me.
No, he won't.
He won't. I mean, to be fair, I was mean. I made fun of his nose.
He wouldn't even debate you.
I know. This is the same way I defeated Claire Kaw. I said hangouts now, and they said no, and I said, well, that means I'm the winner.
Yeah, if you challenge someone to a duel and they don't show up, don't that mean you win?
I think so. That's my rule.
like if they go into argue against you, and then you said, okay, let's debate, and they said no, then basically like, then why would they even want to argue with you in the first place?
Yeah, I don't know why. Well, okay, the reason I'm mad with Claire is because she like called me names and like addressed me. So it's like at that point, if you're shitting on someone, like, then you should talk to them. But she's like, no, I don't want to associate with you. I don't want to be perceived as giving any legitimacy to whatever it is you're doing over here. And I said, okay, bitch, like then I'm gonna be the new caliphate.
But that's exactly what happened when Roaming Millennial was accused of being conspiring with the alt-right, because she had the live stream when she was arguing against Tara McCarthy. Like, what?
Yeah, and honestly,
she gave her a platform.
I'm so burnt
and then said why she was wrong to her face.
No, I'm so sick. I'm so burnt out on all this witch hunting that like we seriously need to have a culture of being permissive. Like I don't care what someone thinks. I don't care what I really legitimately, someone could be like, oh, you had 15 Nazis on your stream. I'd be like, okay, good, fine. I don't care. They can be my friends. I don't care. Like, you're not going to trick me into playing this stupid game of pretending that I care.
Yeah, but it's so weird. Like these people are proud not to debate people. Like, oh, I didn't give them legitimacy. Like, what the fuck? Just means you're not. Go on.
Sorry, that's just like an overcompensation thing for the fact that they know that they don't know what they're talking about, so they're just like, oh, I meant to do that, you know, like, but they kind of know that they don't know anything about most things, so they're never gonna like debate anyone, and it's a defense mechanism.
Like, just imagine this. Just imagine if someone were to go in a debate with someone like AOC and to tell her that open borders and free immigration is a capitalist ploy to keep wages low. Like, what should what should
tell her about the Koch brothers. I don't think she's literate enough to know about the Koch brothers.
Like that would be like her death. She would basically be like, she wouldn't be able to say anything. That's just, she wouldn't. It's just period.
But these people all have this, like, it's not even about political leanings per se. Like, there's a bunch of people, like a group of people from all strides of society that only feel comfortable talking when they know that the audience is on their side. That's very cowardly.
Yeah, and some of them just want to talk to an audience rather than to have a discussion. Like, they don't want to talk with a person who talk back. They want to speak to an audience and then control who gets to say what. The same thing goes with people like Charlie Kirk most of the time. So it's not just the left. It's both. They're both bad when it comes to a lot of things.
Yeah, that was the issue I ran into when I had my debate with Omnizoa, is that I was like coming into it trying to kind of figure out where our agreements and disagreements were and to see if we could like figure something out, but he was approaching it more of like trying to kind of like create a trap and like set things up in a way and like refuse to agree to any definitions of terms, so then it was like impossible to even refer to things, and the whole that whole thing was just kind of a mess.
Like, if people cannot agree on what words mean when they're using them in a debate, then they are not really communicating. So
Yeah,
it's
well, and
pointless.
even throughout the entire debate, I was like, okay, if we can't agree on what these terms mean, we're gonna have to use the terms like one and two, and like you can use number one and I'll use number two, so that way we can refer to our own concepts, right? Really, because that's the only way to do it, right? It's like you need to like have some different word or some different term.
Yeah, or just agree to state how you mean what you say, so you can use the same word, but if somebody listens closely, they can remember what they heard 15 minutes ago. Oh, when I say the word feminist, this is what I mean by feminist. And the other person says, oh, I disagree. When I say feminist, this is what I mean when I say feminist. And it's not that hard to follow a conversation like that.
Well, and there's a popular phrase which is they say intention isn't magic, and I say actually no, it is. Literally, the intention of the word is the definition of that instance of that word. Some people maybe use words in ways that are more or less clear, but when you're engaging with someone and speaking to someone, they are the arbiter of their meaning. And if they're gonna call apples oranges, then fuck it, that's what that word means at that instance. And if you don't want
And
to
you
accept that, then don't talk to that person.
And you also need to like take into consideration that if you speak of a terminology, right, and two different terminologies, and then explain how they're different and how they're not the same, and a lot of people need to realize that certain terminologies actually doesn't differentiate in all languages, to speak. Like, if you, for example, were to explain the differences between the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression in English, you can do it. But you cannot do it in a language like Swedish, because in the Swedish language, the term freedom of speech and freedom of expression mean the exact same thing, and you cannot take them apart.
Yeah, or the worst case I've come across is like the word liberal. Like, you can't really say liberal and expect people to know what you mean. It's different in almost every Western country. And usually the only way to deal with that, even in a small way, is adding a qualifier like liberal Democrat. But then you have to say which liberal Democrat. Like, is it the English ones? Is it
Yeah, well, that's the
American
thing is
ones?
like everybody understands that words have multiple different definitions. There's multiple different languages we can use. Languages borrow words from other languages, and we use the same words to refer to different things at the same time. So like everything is in play that we understand that like when you use a word, that context and that intention is what's going to define it. But when I say that, people are like, "Oh, you're like a radical subjectivist," and I'm like, "Okay, whatever." That's literally not, literally the opposite. But anyway,
Objective. Iran.
Yeah, but it's really just fucked up. Like, when we talk about liberals in Switzerland, it's about people who want free market stuff. When Americans say liberals, it's a progressive.
I don't
somehow.
believe you. Literally, no one in Europe wants a free market.
No, there's a lot of people in Switzerland who pretend they do. That when you ask them some tough questions, they probably will say contradictory things, but at face value, that's what they say they believe.
Literally, the modern standard for free market is if you are afforded any economic choice whatsoever, then it's considered a free market.
Yes, look, I'm personally not a libertarian by creed. Like, I agree with a lot of it, but I'm probably some kind of milquetoast fence sitter. Actually,
Well, I'm a federalist. That's the best. I'm not a fence sitter, but a fence builder.
that I appreciate that. That's what I sit on. So thank you.
Well, good. You can sit very high then.
No, it's just like who even came up with the word fencer? It just leaned towards different directions depending on the question. I thought that was just being critical or independent in your own opinions and thoughts. Why the fuck do you have to qualify that? Like that means I'm nothing.
No, I'm
would
actually
rather them say I'm nothing.
anti-moderate. Like to me, like most people demonize the extremists. I cherish extremists of all varieties, and it's the moderates that honestly that's the next question. The moderate question. the anti Tim Pool. We're taking off the beanie, Tim. I'm coming after you. I'm cutting down that fence.
Yeah, and we'll take your milk toast too. Go eat some real stuff.
Like, this is the problem with people like Tim Pool. It's the same problem with the leftists who want to appease both intersectional feminist LGBTQ plus and Islam at the same time. Like you cannot appease everybody. Like, sorry, that's not going to work. You cannot say that these people are evil, and then the same people are going to say, no, these are evil. Then you cannot say, I'm going to what?
No, it's. I still stand by my point. Like, topical. You have to make up your own mind about different topics, and your results might sound very. If you're afraid of sounding extreme, you're a coward.
Yeah, like people usually react very harshly when I say that I don't think there is that racism or such things. I think those are neutral concepts. It doesn't have any value connected to them inherently, which is when I say that to people, they go completely ballistic. Like, they basically just lose their mind. They basically, like, you say that those things are good. Like, no, I didn't say that.
How dare you?
But how dare you not agree that those are bad? But, like, I don't think they're bad. Wait, are you talking about Greta Thunberg?
I will never be able to hear the term "how dare you" without thinking about that.
How
Face-to-face
dare you?
bitch.
What? No, I'm the best mimic of her. Listen to this. It's Greta Thunberg. You have stolen my hopes and my childhood. How dare you? And now you want to come to us young people for hopes and are broken. You.
Like,
Why good?
That was scary. That's
I'm very good at imitating her accents.
That's terrible and great. Thank you. Like,
It doesn't have the little girl pitch though. Like, because there's the thing with Greta is it's like, yeah, it's the fact that she's this little girl who's very, very like self-righteous too.
This is Greta Thunberg.
Hey, there's always this weird thing. Like, why the fuck does she look like she's 12? Like, isn't she like 16?
Yeah, she's 16. I remember my mother. She basically told me when she was like, if I were in her age, I would have bullied her.
Ooh.
like hearing my parents speak freely in our home is like the most amazing thing ever. They are basically so out there with what was acceptable to say that they actually that they actually make Donald Trump sound politically correct, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess for me, I had like the opposite experience where like my mom's kind of like sort of conservative, but like not enough to go like actual libertarian, right? So then I'm sitting there like listening to Alex Jones and shit, and I'm just like, dude, I don't like Sandy Hook totally didn't happen, and they're like, could you like not say that and just eat your dinner? And I'm like, I'm seriously disturbed, like.
Yeah, but the thing you quoted from your mother is like you seen that bald crazy bitch from Sandy Hook's when someone confronted her, hey, we have it from different people from your school that he bullied the shooter, and she's like, yeah, but if you had known him, you would have bullied him too. Like,
No, that
bitch.
couldn't have been Sandy Hook. That wasn't Sandy Hook. That would have been a different school.
Was it a different with that Latinx bald?
Oh yeah, that was the
No, don't call Latinos Latinx.
I've heard it's triggering, so I'm starting to do it now.
No, it's like if you call a Latino that, then they would get very angry with you because that is basically you are basically saying that
I
their
was trying
language,
to be edgy. I'm aware of that. Like I'm trying to be an asshole. I have to
Like,
do
it's
that from
basically
time
like-
to time.
but that's actually the only thing you can do. That's basically like saying that their entire culture and their language are all wrong, and that people that are on the enlightened English-speaking world need to fix their language and their culture by calling them something that they deem to be better.
There was
Okay, but to
actually a
be
poll
fair, like,
lately. Most of them
Spanish?
want to be called Hispanics because they speak Spanish.
Yeah, but there's a difference between Hispanic and Latino. But people have different definitions of the distinction.
Hey, an Italian is a Latino, technically.
Okay, Italians are black. Okay, let's just settle it now.
Yep,
No,
they
Italians are-
have that tall, big dick energy, of course.
Yep, they're black. They're
Well,
Sargon levels of black.
So in other words, not at all.
All right, I'm gonna wrap
I
it
was
up now.
definitely using Latinx ironically, but you have a point there. Like there's like 2% of Latino population of America who want to be called Latinx, and everybody else is like, "What the fuck's that
One.
word?"
Yeah, let's change the whole language. The whole
Like, they-
language is
like-
wrong.
No one who sincerely calls someone else Latinx speaks Spanish. None of them do that because then it wouldn't do
The
it.
term was created by some probably very white, very lesbian academics. Probably.
It was created on Tumblr.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a stupid thing. Like, Latino is it's the male ending of the word. We can't have that.
But in Spanish, all the male endings becomes gender neutral if it refers to males and female.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
like
same with everything.
same
right?
in German.
We
Like,
use
if you
the
have the
word-
male version, you mean everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Usually.
But yeah, well, anyway, I'm gonna wrap this one up now. Do we have any closing thoughts on how lesbians are trying to take over the world?
Well, I don't think they are. I think they already have enough power, and I think they kind of know that. They kind of don't. They're not even really pushing. Like, I appreciate Black Knight Patriarch's posts, but it's not actually news. I can completely understand how that's aggravating, but it's not actually conspiracy or movement in that sense. They already have all the power.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe there's a piece of it that we're missing that'll make it all kind of hang together. I hope that eventually Black Knight Fool maybe listen to some of this stream and let us know what we missed, if anything. I did try to explore different angles of it to see if we could find something, but I guess we'll leave it where it's at, and and
maybe come back
revisit the
to it
question
once we get
later
more
if we have
information.
we'll revisit it. We'll throw it out there, but. So lesbians, it looks like we're not prosecuting you today, but we got our eye on you.
We're gonna impeach you someday.
My God. Wait, should I make my closing statement?
Yeah, please.
Well, I would like to first say that, if you talk to most, a lot of lesbians, they're not really most of them. A lot of them are just right wingers, to a large extent. They're not really the thing the left wing try to portray lesbians as being, and they basically just like everybody else, just want their wives and their kids and be left alone to that. That's just what most lesbians are in my experience. And yeah, so used to. That's basically all I got to say about the lesbian people. They're nothing really special about them. They're actually about as ordinary as you can possibly be at this point.
Yeah, and Camille Paglia, she seems like a cool aunt, right?
Oh yeah. She did.
All right. On that note, I'm gonna end it here. Thanks everybody for coming. It's always fun to have people hop onto the stream. Always great to have people in the chat, and I'll try to keep doing these around this time each week.